Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Whatcom County Council meeting on May 30th, 2017. We're glad you're all here. Please call the roll.
Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Red Brown.
Here.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Todd Donovan.
Here.
Ken Mann.
Here.
Satpal Sidhu.
Here.
Carl Weimer.
Here. Thank you. Please rise and join me with the flag and for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What happened?
Okay. Couple announcements. If you have your cell phones with you tonight, please either turn them off or turn them to vibrate. And if you'll be handing out any paperwork during either the open session or a public hearing, please make sure our staff down here gets a copy for our records. We have an item from Special Committee of the Whole, discussion of the proposed ordinance adopting various minor amendments to the Whatcom County Code Title 20, making corrections, updates, and clarifications. So do we have anybody here that wants to talk to us about that?
Oh, Gary's dying to talk to us.
We'll be having a public hearing on this momentarily, so this is just kind of an early staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Davis, Whatcom County Planning. From time to time, usually every year, the staff puts together a list of what we call code scrub items, things that we found in the code that needs to be corrected, some clarifications, some corrections, some updates. We have a list of about 22 items, and they are listed as Exhibits A through V in your packet tonight. This was introduced, the ordinance to adopt these was introduced on May 16th. Public hearing is scheduled for tonight. And we had 2 written comments before the Planning Commission hearing on this. Staff made some suggested changes based on those 2 comments before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission accepted those, and the Planning Commission did not have any discussion or questions on that, approved these items. And that concludes our report on this, unless you have some questions.
Okay, questions from the council? Seeing none, we will hold that public hearing in a little bit.
Thank you.
We have 5 sets of minutes to approve tonight. Special Committee of the Whole for April 18th, 2017. Regular County Council for April 18th, 2017. Special Committee of the Whole Executive Session for May 2nd, 2017. Special Committee of the Whole Open Meeting for May 2nd, 2017. And Regular County Council for May 2nd, 2017. I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Now I'd like to turn it over to our county executive, Jack Laus, to present the State of the County address.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, County Council, and citizens. It's good to be here tonight to present the 2017 Executive Summary of the State of the County. I'm pleased this evening to present this Executive Summary of this year's State of the County. For those interested in reading the extensive document that outlines our departmental achievements, challenges, and initiatives, please visit the Executives page within the county's website. It contains a wealth of good information pertaining to the breadth of our multidisciplinary operation. In general, there have been many achievements. We have 5 of our 6 labor agreements settled through 2018, and we remain committed to treating all of our employees fairly, both as represented and unrepresented employees. We adopted a sustainable biennial budget for 2017 through 2018. In 2016, the county's general fund collected 101% of its budgeted revenues and expended 94.36% of its budgeted expenditures. The Emergency Medical Services Property Tax Levy was passed by the voters, providing a stable revenue stream for the purpose of public safety related to medical services. These facts translate into a healthy ending fund balances in our major accounts. This allows us to maintain our current level of services throughout the next biennium while providing some revenue for capital maintenance projects. Our information technology initiatives are moving forward by leaps and bounds as we bring the county current with available technology to make staff more productive and to make our local government more transparent. Highlights are that council meetings are now being streamed over the county's YouTube channel. We've established an online job application process. We have an initiative of a new web-based presence for Whatcom County veterans. We've implemented the new state's drives programs in the auditor's office for licensing. And we've completed an enhanced ability for submission of real estate excise tax online in the assessor treasurer office, which is primarily used by the title offices in the county. Next, we will implement and convert our permit system to a GIS-centric platform that will completely run our land records and stormwater asset management programs. I believe this will make our permit processing more efficient in planning and development services, public works, and our health department for the benefit of our customers. We will also have in place by the end of 2017 a countywide agenda management system that will make council agendas electronic. These and all of our IT initiatives will improve internal workflows and increase citizen access to information. Our health department, planning and development services, public works, and parks and recreation departments continue to bring innovation to their operations. While I'm pleased with the accomplishments of all of our departments, I'm particularly pleased that we have increased our road and bridge maintenance exponentially in the last year. And I want to thank the leadership and team members of the Public Works Department for doing a fine job on our behalf. Again, I encourage you to read my full report for information on what these specific departments have achieved and what they have on their horizons. These 4 departments also have been leaders in our lean initiative process. Following the implementation of projects last year, I have tasked this group with recognizing and implementing 1 new lean project in each of their departments within the next 12 months. I'm encouraged by their enthusiasm for thinking of ways to improve customer service and efficiency, and I look forward to the outcome of the challenge I have placed before them. Additionally, our criminal justice programs throughout the organization are striving for improvements. The Sheriff's Office, Superior and District Courts, the Prosecutor, and the Public Defender's offices are working together making inroads on robust jail alternative programs. I'm pleased that we've added a caseworker in the Public Defender's office to facilitate positive outcomes for our clients, along with celebrating graduations from our mental health court program. A new guardianship courthouse facilitator program has just been implemented in the Superior Court, and the Sheriff's ongoing initiatives for offenders with electronic home monitoring, work release, and work crews are resulting in opportunities for offenders to avoid returning to incarceration. As you know, we have 2 major challenges ahead of us, and we are continuing to track towards solutions. One is the challenge of the use of permit-exempt wells that was a result of the Supreme Court ruling Hearst versus Whatcom County. We are still actively advocating for a state legislative fix so that we have long-term solutions for our citizens who are impacted by this ruling. We will need to continue to work on this issue for years as population increases and land use decisions will continue to impact the legal availability of water. The other major challenge I want to note is, of course, our new Justice Center. We have made strides to find consensus with all of our cities on a new jail use agreement. Before you tonight is a proposal for your consideration to move this project forward for potential voter approval. We are still in a race against the cost escalation of construction with every day that passes. Our current facility, as you are aware, needs replacement for the safety of staff and the residents. I ask that you act expediently on the decision to authorize my signature and to authorize the vote in November. Without voter support, we will need to continue to protect our cash reserves to pay for the operation and maintenance of our existing jail. I encourage citizens to take advantage of the information we continue to add to our county website and on all of our projects and initiatives. If anyone has questions on specific topics, call my office and we'll meet with you to find answers to those questions. We have made progress on some large initiatives, and we have serious business to attend to in the next years that our community expects us as leaders to accomplish. I appreciate the support of the council, my leadership team, the great and professional staff of the county, and all our citizen volunteers on our boards and committees. I believe we are focused on improving our quality of life for everyone in Whatcom County. And thank you for allowing me to present this executive summary of the State of the County remarks for you today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Okay.
Same, isn't it the same?
Yes, Mr.
I just want to thank the executive for his work. And as much as I know we can be kind of a pain sometimes, I appreciate
yourself.
well, okay, me, but I appreciate your work.
Okay, we'll move into our public hearings. Audience members who signed up at the back of the room prior to the beginning of our meeting will be called first, and you'll be asked to form a line on either side. If you were unable to sign up, you will be able to speak at the end of, when we've gotten through all the people that are listed on the sheets. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record and will be given 3 minutes to address the council. The council staff will keep track of your time, and they'll give you a warning when you have 30 seconds left, and they will tell you when the 3 minutes is up. So the first public hearing we have is a resolution granting a quit-claim deed to the city of Bellingham. We do not have anyone signed up. Would anyone like to speak to us about this issue? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. The next is an ordinance adopting various minor amendments to Whatcom County Code Title 20 zoning, making corrections, updates, and clarifications. This is the public hearing that I mentioned earlier that Gary just gave a staff report on. So I will open the public hearing. We have no one signed up for that. Is there anyone that would like to speak to us about Title 20 zoning amendments? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And what's the wishes of the council?
Move approval. Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Yes, Mr. Mann?
I just found one small typo. I mentioned it to Gary. I don't know if you found it under animal husbandry. It says animal husbandry means the or practice of breeding, and I just think you want to get rid of that word or there. Okay. So there was a nod from staff that they're going to fix that little typo.
Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, I have questions about two things. The Exhibit C and Exhibit D relating to Lammards. And I don't know, I'll start with the G one, the 7,000 square foot building. So I guess it's been interpreted as you can have multiple 7,000 square foot buildings. But how does that,
Per building.
per building, how does that stay consistent with the idea that uses are supposed to be consistent with what existed in 1990?
Well, this is the type 3 Lammert, not the type 1 Lammert, I believe.
I'm coming back to that one, but okay.
Yeah.
That's Exhibit C.
Exhibit C is the type 1 Lammert. Type 3 Lammert is the exhibit that you're talking about, and that doesn't have the 1990 requirement, but it does call for limited.
Well, on page 327, it does say, same type that existed in the same rural community designated on July 1, 1990, and then the next paragraph changes the maximum allowable 7,000 square feet to per building. That's Exhibit G. That's why I was assuming the 1990 thing was.
Yes, where you see number 3.322, is that what you're talking about? Where it says,
321.
well, 321 says in a rural community designation, that's a type 1 Lammert.
Okay.
In the next paragraph, it says 322 in a rural business designation, that's a type 3 Lammert.
Okay. And they're not constrained by the GMA 1990?
No. Type 3 Lammert is an isolated, described as an isolated group of existing development, existing businesses, but it doesn't have the 1990.
Okay, but then, okay, so then this gets to Exhibit C, administrative approved uses.
Yes.
So adding manufacturing fabrication type uses, that would be, so that's my same question. Would that be consistent with the GMA?
Yes,
interpretation?
this section, we're not adding anything. The reason we needed to do a cleanup on this one is back in 2012, when we revised the zoning code to reflect the requirements of the type 1 Lammert to be subject to the size, scale, use, and intensity in 1990, we created a chart in Title 20, 2080, 100, and that chart gives for each Lammert area, each type 1 Lammert area, subject to the 1990 requirement across the county. For each one, it says, this is the largest use of this type that there was, and that serves as the building size limitation for both cumulative building size and for per building size. And that chart has categories for different types of uses. One was the retail, one was automotive repair, and in our zoning code, we rearranged all the permitted and conditionally permitted uses based on those columns in that chart. Well, for some reason, this particular section, 2069, and maybe one other, didn't get those classifications made, so they weren't grouped under headings like the rest of them were. So we have problems, without those headings, we have problems applying particular uses to that chart. So we're not changing the requirements, the actual requirements in the code.
Okay, I think I'm following this.
Just
So if I'm
putting it
looking
under new headings.
So I'm looking at page 308 and page 309, so their manufacturing / fabrication is read as in it's being inserted, but then if I look at on page 308, then on page 309, it was already there. So is this just?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
something that existed as a use consistent with pre-1990?
These uses all existed previously. The only thing we're doing is in red, we're just adding the heading. These are this type of use. These are the uses that will
I think I got it.
apply that particular column in that table.
Thanks.
Ms. Brenner?
I have a couple of, one's a comment and the other's a question. I have a comment on page 344 of our packet, 44 of the material, Exhibit P, road classifications.
Yes.
It says, road classifications mean any specific terms referring to type of roads such as arterials, collectors, et cetera. And when we did this originally, that et cetera included some other things, but one of them it included was shared driveways. And I'm just gonna say it because it was the intent. So that's gonna come up again later. I'm gonna bring it back up. The other thing is, on this part about, 370 of our packet, it was to you, Gary, and it was a proposed change to the definition of kennel.
Yes.
And I'm not sure I understand what, we didn't change it, we're not changing anything to disallow grooming and training.
No.
So I'm not sure I quite get it. Or sale.
Yes, as the definition of kennel reads now in 2097, 191, it says kennel means establishment where 5 or more dogs, cats, or other household pets are housed, groomed, bred, or boarded. And with that "or" there, it made it sound, somebody could come in and
could only do
interpret
one?
it that saying, if you're doing only one of those, if you're doing a grooming, that means you're a kennel.
Well, let's just,
And that's not necessarily the case. Kennels, when we looked up the definition in the dictionary, kennels are where you house and board.
Groom or
And
sell.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what we tried to do, is get that definition back to what the basic dictionary definition was. Now, the comment that came in said, well, does that preclude us being able to also groom and train? And so that's when we added in the second sentence here saying a kennel may include grooming and/or training as accessory
That's what I
to the
thought,
kennel.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that seemed to satisfy the
Okay.
people who made the comment. Like I said, we had 2 comments made before the planning commission hearing. That was one of them. We made this change, we made another change in the planning commission.
Sounds good to me. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, any other discussion?
Well, I just, can I say one quick thing?
Yes.
Okay. So for anybody who's not aware, this is just fixing it to mean what we always meant it to mean and to have the language clearer. Mostly, that's what I saw this whole, through
It's
this whole thing.
clarifications, and it's also changes where we changed a part of the code and changed the numbering, but didn't change the reference to that
Right.
numbering.
Right.
Little things like that, so that's why every year or so, we come in and scrub the code to take
Well,
care
the
of
reason
those
I just want to
issues.
say that is we got another letter about something that isn't in here, but I think the person thought it was. I spoke to you about
Okay.
that.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes,
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Paul Sadoo,
Yes.
Carl Weimer.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Our final public hearing is a resolution authorizing the sale of Whatcom County surplus property pursuant to Whatcom County Code 1.10. Do we have any kind of a report on this at all? I don't see anyone. So we will open the public hearing. We have no one that has signed up. Is there anyone that would like to speak to us about surplus property? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and put it back into the hands of the council.
I'll move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
There is no reason for the county to own that property.
Okay, any
That's
other,
a,
any
that was
further discussion?
simple.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We will now go into the open session. Open session, audience members will have up to 3 minutes to address the council on any issue that's relevant to county business. Before beginning, please state your name and your topic. And again, the 3 minutes applies, so you have 3 minutes. Staff will tell you when you have 30 seconds, and staff will tell you when the 3 minutes is up. So I will now open the open public session.
My name is Joy Gilfillan. I'm president of the Restorative Community Coalition, and I'm here to give feedback from today's Finance Committee meeting on the jail. The taxpayers still say no to a mega tax. We say yes to a public hearing that listens to our concerns and includes presentations from the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, the Vera Institute, the Restorative Community Coalition, and any other nonprofit or group that has fiscal alternatives for the council to consider before you make the irrevocable decision to approve the executive branch's mega tax proposal. I listened to your Finance Committee meeting today, and I have some immediate feedback. Thank you to Ken Mann and Paul Sadoo for bringing forward your amendments to the document in discussion today. They are smart and responsible actions and deserve consideration. I still do not support the sales tax. However, if you do choose to pass the tax funding initiative on to the cities, I agree with these amendments. Thank you for holding a rational and open discussion about this jail initiative. Your discussion allowed people to remove some presumptive biases that often have prevailed in the past discussions. It was nice to hear you all truly thinking through some of the big issues that have been raised, questioning assumptions and thinking about the future. And yes, technology and new methods of working with addictions, mental health, and therapies are absolutely changing the game of incarceration. Here is a list of specific observations I made as I listened to you all unravel this huge tangled web. so you could approach it in a fiscally responsible, accountable, and logical way. No current needs assessment has yet been done. Without one, you are hamstrung for good decision-making, and that was obvious today. Everyone I have spoken to knows that we all need a third-party analysis that includes SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This includes a fiscal accounting analysis and an internal rate of return type of cost-benefit analysis to the taxpayers. It is necessary to be functionally equipped to deal with the long-term fiscal, social, and very real consequences of encumbering taxpayers and small businesses in this county. These citizens in this county and all the cities and nations must deal with the economic ripple effects and human consequences of withdrawing billions of dollars out of this community that should perhaps be better served if it stayed here and recirculated. This tax is a game changer and a bellwether decision that will change the county lifestyle and our quality of lives forever. It has already cost taxpayers over $4.5 million to hire jail
30
planners.
seconds, please.
Contractors who never did an adequate or complete needs assessment as they promised to do for us taxpayers. They took advantage of the contracts to just list all our concerns as outside the scope of planning to build a jail, and instead they planned an expandable pod-style jail to be placed on land that will cost taxpayers $500,000 an acre to build on. That is an exorbitant cost basis before build-out of a jail. It does not pencil by any stretch of the imagination. This is outlandish to ignore our concerns and then rush to build on land that could expand
Time.
to accommodate. I have someone else to finish the statement. Thank you.
Jamie Lieb. I'm finishing off for Joy to accommodate this 2,400-bed regional
Could you
jail project.
state your name, please?
Jamie Lieb.
Yeah, and speak directly into the microphone, so.
Okay. So I'm going to finish what Joy was saying, to accommodate a 2,400-bed regional jail project and then expect taxpayers to just ante up tax that amounts to a blank check to the executive branch to plan out a whole different economic future for the people of Whatcom County. No, taxpayers said no in 2015, we say no today. Whatever the jail contractors did is biased and completely out of date today. The good news is that it showed us what we do not want to do. The current decision must be made based on new knowledge, especially since the City of Bellingham, the Lumbee Nation, the Nooksack Nation, and other groups and organizations have already made long-lasting changes. Please give your judges, public defenders, and prosecutors time and the opportunity to revise and upscale the law and justice system and their therapeutic courts to be consistent with today's best practices. This council has made great strides with the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force and with the Vera Institute, and by bringing in the ACLU, Smart Justice, the lead system prosecutors, and sheriffs who are making changes to their own systems. Our local jurisdictions are learning and are making huge changes that are yielding high returns for us taxpayers, the true stockholders of the county corporation. Let these powerful people continue to do work solving the real problems of our system, give them a chance to use their own wits to solve the root causes of homelessness, trauma, and addictions, so they can intercept the cycles of poverty and abuse that have permeated our culture as a side effect from failed policies of mass incarceration. The time is now to focus on fixing the current jail now. Allow the Vera Institute to produce results. Allow our local people to do the work to change the system from the inside. Then we can become a leader in real reform as we work together to tackle the deeper market problems of the private prison industry that has filtered into the local jail contracting industries. Any family or friend that has been arrested can tell you, and I will speak from that point, that is us, if you listen to them without prejudice, the real cost they have paid to private contractors who've preyed upon them and their families when they were arrested. People are paying penalties that most of you do not even know. It is truly not the time for this council to pass a jail tax initiative onto the citizens in Whatcom County. It is time to listen, learn, and change. We have hit our tolerance level on being manipulated by an industry that is hidden from the common story of politics. You are on the cusp of awesome
30
good work.
seconds, please.
Please continue and please help us to help our disadvantaged to get back on their feet. We are paying a big price for denial. Our son died just in this last year by suicide because he ended up in this mass incarceration system that this country has allowed. Please try and change this system so this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to us during the open session?
Good evening, council members. My name is Katie Cruikshank, and I'm the Programs Development Director with Northwest Youth Services. And I wanted to come here tonight to say a few comments in support of the proposed resolution entitled Resolution Expressing Support for Efforts to Reduce Homelessness by Investing in Vocational Programs for Homeless Youth, which I believe all council members received a copy of today. So as background for the resolution, poverty and unemployment continue to be the most commonly reported causes of homelessness. And for our young people experiencing homelessness, the struggle to find a job is exacerbated by additional barriers, and those can include anything from not having proper identification, to not yet having employment experience to put on your resume, to not having a healthy supportive adult to list as a job reference, or lacking basic life skills because they're in survival mode on the streets. And these barriers are well represented in the youth unemployment rate, which statewide is about 12%. So not having this opportunity to gain work skills or have that first job experience, and not having a supportive adult who wants to encourage you and help motivate you to enter the workforce can increase the risk of homeless youth entering into chronic adult homelessness. So Northwest Youth Services is dedicated to ending homelessness, and our vocational program specifically targets these very issues. We promote the self-sufficiency of youth and all young adults, and we offer truly low-barrier employment options through our youth jobs program, which get youth that first employment opportunity, get youth that first job reference they can use on their resumes, and it incentivizes employers throughout the county to participate in this solution. We also offer truly low-barrier case management where youth can come in and learn hard and soft skills to support them in getting a job, and that could not just be resume building, it can be learning to communicate well with your employer, learning to show up on time, things that they may not have learned in a healthy environment growing up. So this resolution would support funding our vocational program and allow for increased opportunities to expand our youth jobs program into the county, thereby increasing the number of youth we can serve and increasing participation of the community into this solution. We have goals to serve 95 youth a year and at least 14 in our youth jobs program, hopefully many more. And the last thing I'll say before my 3 minutes is probably up, I'm trying to talk fast, is that the best part of this program is that it's truly preventative. It allows opportunities for youth to build basic life skills and vocational skills that can ultimately help prevent chronic adult homelessness. This has huge benefits to not only the
30 seconds,
individual,
please.
but to the communities. We spend roughly $1,800 per youth per job stipend. This is in comparison to the $10,000 to $50,000 estimated that a community pays to support a chronically homeless adult. So by spending a small amount upfront for intentional skill building, we're reducing the future impact on taxpayers and the burden to the community. So I want to thank Mr. Brown for advocating on behalf of these youth. These youth have potential. We see it every day. We love the jobs that we do, and we really hope to continue partnering with the county through this unique opportunity. Thank you.
Amy Malone. I'll be reading a letter. But first I wanted to thank especially Mr. Mann and Mr. Sidhu this morning for your proposals to the jail tax proposal that Mr. Lau has brought forward. If the tax does get voted on, I also agree with those amendments. So thank you for that discussion earlier today. I am also speaking on behalf of the Restorative Community Coalition as a board member. Our coalition thanks you, the Whatcom County Council, for authorizing the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force and for authorizing the hiring of the Vera Institute. They are working with many officials from inside the system and getting good work done. Vera's mapping process alone has revealed 38 processes inside the administration of the law and justice system that are being analyzed for improvements. Implementing their recommendations could easily reduce the demand for jail bed space by 30 to 50%. Just with bail corrections and prosecutorial discretion changes, we could reduce costs, risk, overhead, and overcrowding all at once and improve safety. The city of Bellingham has implemented many alternatives to the incarceration with great results. With electronic home monitoring alone in 2016, they have saved around $300,000 and an additional $290,000 so far in 2017. One of the administrators commented that, to our shame, it took refusing to pass the tax in the first place in 2015 for these measures to be looked into and implemented. The Lummi Nation and the Nooksack Nations have been changing who and how they incarcerate people. Reports indicate they have been getting better results by using swift and certain, by expanding the use of restorative justice, recovery programs, and tackling homelessness. Together with other proven solutions showing up from around the country, it is abundantly clear that it's time to take a different approach to law and justice in Whatcom County. This council and our taxpayers need to continue to say no to mega taxes and mega jails. We must say no to building an oversized regional jail and a huge sheriff's facility out in the county. Based on the new research that is now accelerating on how the jail industry works, it is extremely high risk to give a blank check to a system that needs downsizing. In Whatcom County, taxpayers have already passed 3 taxes to help alleviate the prior problems. Now we must focus on reducing the newly discovered excesses inside the system and using them as they were originally intended. The opportunity today is doing things differently to make us a leader. Our platform is
30 seconds, please.
with the first jail downtown to immediately fix and upgrade to hold only violent offenders. For the Division Street property, to use that as low-risk, low-level people, and to expand alternatives and diversions and electronic home monitoring, and to expand prevention and intervention, mental health and addiction services, as has been recommended by the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. Please, I would also request a formal public hearing to hear reports from Vera and the task force. Thank you.
I'm Charlie Storrs, Whatcom County resident since 1999. I rise to speak against the premature jail task force. The so-called modern theory and philosophy of incarceration dates to the 1840s. Let me say that again. The soi-disant modern theory and philosophy of incarceration dates to the 1840s. It's 175 years old. We have made progress in lots of fields: transportation, communication, food, you name it. The only thing that has not changed in those 175 years is the mass incarceration. You've got a lot of problems. I admit that you need a new jail. Not where it's been recommended and not the size it's been recommended. There's lots of other problems. You are working on a facility with 34 beds, and that's a very good thing. I understand from Mayor Linville's presentation that we share that with King County, that we share that with Island County, Skagit County, Snoqualmie, and San Juan counties. So you're saying that you think 16 people north of Seattle need mental health help. You are saying that 18 people north of Seattle need drug help. This is clearly inadequate. The scale of this inadequacy is far larger than the very real problems you have with your jail. You've got to get more beds for mental health and for drug addiction, way more important than dealing with the jail. You also, before you build a new jail, have to get rid of the cash bail system. The cash bail system has been shown numerous times, quite clearly, to be racist and classist and leading to hardship not only for the people who are in jail, but also for their families. Paying $2 a minute for a local phone call. That is just insane. You've got to stop the bail system. We now have one person working on reentry with the Public Defender's Office. I don't know the statistics of the number of people going in, but from the Herald it looks like it's 8 or 12 people per day going in. Somehow we got to have 8 or 12 people coming out.
30 seconds, please.
There's no way that one staff person is facilitating the reentry of 8 or 12 people a day. There is so many needs that do not just focus on the jail, get the whole picture done, do it the other parts before the jail. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Amy Glasser. I'd like to start just by saying I hope that the decision is going to be to sell the property in Ferndale, where the public's not really aware of why it got bought in the first place, but it's expensive, it needs a lot of mitigation. I think the consensus is going to be that there shouldn't be any property built up there when it comes to a jail, and certainly not a justice complex. I think the second thing I'd like to say is that it's imperative for us to have a public forum on this huge, huge endeavor. I think everything is, all the science and all the studies are coming to say now that jail is not the answer to anything. I think the county has looked at that law and order budget in the eyes of justice and crime, and I think we need to head in the direction of homelessness and mental health and substance abuse services throughout the county, so that it's not just Bellingham that has to brunt all the responsibility. That whole idea that there's only going to be 32 beds for mental health makes no sense when we know the statistics are at least half the population in jail have mental health and substance abuse problems. So if we can be diverting them to facilities that handle that, rather than jail cells which are bright, light, loud, noisy, and certainly not conducive to good mental health, I think the people who work at the jails will be in better shape, as well as the people who we hope to get out of the jail and restore back into society. The minority population in jail is 5 times the public percentage. So there's 5 times as many people from Native American tribes in jail as proportionally to the percentage in the population. The same with black people. That is coming from somewhere, whether that needs more training with police and with the sheriff's department, if it's more about the bail, if it's more about who gets arrested and with what charges. Something needs to change in terms of education and training, and I think that, along with all of the other things that we're going to try to do for preventing incarceration, is going to result in not needing a new jail at all, but fixing the one we have. We're building a small one at the parking lot. I think Ms. Brenner had talked about that years ago, the idea of putting the parking lot where the old jail will be, and a new small jail over there, and Division Street is for most of the people that actually need to be incarcerated. So thank you very much for the time and for all the work on this, and please have a public hearing. Please, before you even consider putting anything on the ballot, find out what the public wants and what we're willing to spend our money on, and I think you're going to find out that it's not a jail. It's going to be services and homelessness and housing.
30 seconds, please.
And things that are going to restore people, not that are going to destroy them.
Robert Lieb, Whatcom County resident, Bellingham business owner. I'm speaking against the tax proposal for new jail. I would like to thank Sheriff Alpha for my recent jail tour. I got to see the conditions where they held my mentally ill son, and I was devastated. There is no doubt that something needs to be done about that jail. Mr. Lowe's will tell you that the only answer would be the Ferndale location. I believe that to be a misguided and overly expensive solution. I've looked at the plans, and this is not what you would think of as a community jail. This is a full-blown prison. This will bankrupt our community. There will be no money left to run programs that actually keep people out of jail and provide positive outcomes. It will be all about feeding the jail monster. We live in a community that has allowed our judges and prosecutors to victimize the mentally ill and marginalized people for too long. Far too many people have spent time in that jail. And if we give Mr. Lowe's the funds to build the Ferndale jail, the abuses will continue. Even the sheriff told me that he had a chat with the police about arresting people for not having garbage service being a little ridiculous. That kind of crap goes on all of the time, and you wonder why we run out of jail space? What has changed since the last jail proposal went to the voters? A proposal for fewer beds at the same cost and in the same location. A transportation nightmare getting people to and from Ferndale. An operational cost that will be through the roof, and no real changes to the jailing industry that our prosecutors have embraced. Unfortunately for the current prisoners, if you try to push this plan on the voters with no system changes, you are going to further delay any kind of jail improvement. My associates and I are going to launch a media campaign like you've never seen before to educate the voters about and the county about the atrocities that continue in this county. Once the voters understand that all you want to do is build a bigger version of a failed system, your proposal will be defeated. Hopefully by this defeat, you will finally understand that you need to make systematic changes and stop putting so many people in jail, and use the funds that have already been authorized and get on with improving the jail situation. The solutions are right in front of you. Enlarge the Division Street facility, it's a perfect location. Why would the voters allow you to build a new, bigger jail, then tear it down or convert it to storage? That is insanity and pure waste. You could easily build an affordable solution that all of us could get behind, but the money needs to be spent upfront on diversion and not just bigger cages. The choice is yours. Be progressive and win, or live in the past and we all will lose. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Farino, and I'm a resident of Bellingham. And I was hoping to go to the Finance Committee meeting today to hear more about this proposed jail, but unfortunately I couldn't get out of work to do that. But I wanted to thank those of you on the council who I've heard have advocated for the ongoing use of the Division Street facility, for those who are mentioning at least the possibility of a public hearing, which I think we desperately need. For those who are advocating for reducing the size from what was proposed by the Jail Stakeholders Work Group. I know they didn't formally submit that, but we know the size they've been talking about for months by attending their meetings. And I'm happy to hear that at least some of the members of the council are talking about reducing that size. I still think 400 beds is way more than we need, but at least we're starting to move in the right direction. And I'm happy to hear that at least some of you are advocating for not being wedded to this idea of building it out in Ferndale. That is a huge problem for people who are trying to get to visit their families and to move all of our criminal justice system away from where people live and where public transportation is accessible. It just seems like madness. We have a facility on Division Street we can use. As other people have mentioned, we have the parking lot downtown that we can use, and I think this would be better for everyone. But most importantly, I want to stress the need that we have to have a full public hearing on this issue. I think there are a lot of people in this community who do not want to see a bigger jail. I think we all know that what's going to keep us safe is having services for people with substance abuse problems, having homes for people who are homeless, and putting our money into alternatives to incarceration. That is what's best for people, for their families, and for all of us to keep us safe. As part of this public hearing, I think the community really needs to hear the findings of the Vera Institute. They have found these 38 areas of potential improvement in our system. And we need to not only hear what those are, but give them time to be implemented. If we fix those 38 problems, we may find that we need a lot fewer beds than what's even being proposed now. I think we also need to hear from the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. They are doing amazing work, and we have not had time or money to see what would happen if all of their recommendations were implemented. And they really need to weigh in on what the size of the jail would need to be if we implemented these recommendations. I think we also need to hear from the Restorative Community Coalition and the recommendations that they have for how we can reduce incarceration in our town and in our county. And I just want to also second what Amy Glasser said about us having a huge race problem in this community. We are incarcerating African Americans and Native Americans at 5 times the rate that we're incarcerating whites, and it is not because they are committing crimes at 5 times the rates of white people. We need to deal with a race problem in our community if we're going to have any hope of trying to solve our incarceration problem. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak during the open session? Come on down.
Clint Lincoln, Bellingham resident, 37 years. I was recently speaking with one of the guys who was involved in the jail planning, and I asked him why we're not fixing our current jail, and he said it would be about 40 million to fix it. Before it was a few million, then it was 20, now it's 40. I'm wondering where that number really is, but it sure seems even at 40 that it's a whole lot less than the 140 and 240, or we're not really quite sure how many millions it's going to cost to build a new facility. Seems strange. Anyhow, as an adult, I'm held accountable for my actions, and I'm responsible for my actions or lack thereof. And I want to know who is going to stand up and take responsibility and accountability for our deteriorating jail that we currently have. It seems to me that we don't care about the workers' safety or the inmates' safety. It seems like somebody needs to step up and fix that place right now. It's amazing to me that it's gone this long and it's that bad. So that being said, I agree, we need a jail. That's why we have 2 of them. the work release place is undercrowded from what I understand, and the other one is overcrowded, seems to be intentionally, not quite sure, but it seems odd. Seems like the goal of the law and justice system should be to reduce crime. And is building a bigger facility going to do that? I would think not. And if they do build this larger jail, they're going to have to fill it, or they're going to get a lot of criticism if they don't. And that just seems backwards and just doesn't seem correct in what we should be doing in society today. I'd like them to fix the current jail now so it's safe for the workers and the people who are in there. And like people have said before, no means no to the tax. I don't know why we're still going back to the tax and why we are still addressing that. Seems like we already did. Is there a needs assessment done for the new facility? I haven't seen one, and I think, like other people have been saying, we need to get that public hearing going and get the public out here and actually see what everybody else wants. We need to get more education because population is growing. I agree, and that means we need to teach people how to not get caught up in that system. The prosecutorial discretion in Whatcom County is out of bounds on both ends of the spectrum. The prosecutor
30
and
seconds,
prosecuting
please.
attorney is stacking charges on the poor and mentally ill while simultaneously ignoring major felony crimes from wealthy businessmen. I'm a victim of that. Currently, I am dealing with that. We need to address the prosecutorial discretion in Whatcom County now. It is a massive problem. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak during the open session?
Carol Perry, Whatcom County. Council, if you would base your decision on the testimony that you've heard this evening, you're either not facing reality or you have very poor memories. Each one of you, I think at one point or another, has said, we need a jail. There's been 3 committees, jail committees, from all walks of life that have come to the same conclusion that we need a jail. When the past jail was finished, I was told that it was too small on the day it was dedicated. That was addressed. By each committee. Each committee said, we don't know what size it needs to be, how many beds. The council said at that point, we need professional help. Professional help was hired. Thousands of dollars were dedicated. Went through that whole process. I think they said that we needed a 500 or 600 bed jail. But the council at that time said, we don't know for sure. That sounds excessive. So a plan was drawn up that had pods. All the services could be, if you remember, could be taken care of, and you could build less pods. Then if the number wasn't right, you could add more pods and you wouldn't have this outdated building for years and years and years. There's all sorts of, I think, I've told you this over and over, I think $150,000 plans for the building. You voted to buy the property. This is a basic thing that government is supposed to do. I know there's all sorts of people that come to you and ask you for all sorts of money for all sorts of things. Have you ever been the victim
30 seconds, please.
of a crime and had to look people like that in the eye? And we have, and I don't know what to say. Don't base this look at the work that's been done. Glean what's good there. Don't base it on emotion.
Any others? Last call. We will close the open session and turn it over to finance.
Do you want to do this one first?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce a resolution setting a hearing date to gather public comment on the sizing of a proposed new Whatcom County Jail.
Okay.
Do we need to read this in the record or not?
Yeah, go ahead, it's not too long.
Okay. Setting a public hearing date to gather comments on the sizing of a proposed new Whatcom County Jail. Whereas the Whatcom County Council wishes to hear from the public on sizing of a proposed new Whatcom County Jail, and whereas Whatcom County's administration has estimated necessary bed capacity for a new jail to be somewhere between 463 and 489 beds, inclusive of behavioural health and medical facilities, and whereas this proposed capacity is less than the 521 beds proposed in 2015 and more than the current capacity of 362, and whereas Whatcom County's present jail capacity includes 212 beds in the main jail and 150 in the work centre, and whereas the main jail is currently operating at capacity and booking restrictions or limitations on jail use by cities are in place, and whereas determining a size for a new jail has three basic components. First, base capacity, how many beds are needed for inmates at any given time. Second, behavioural health and medical capacity. The current proposal includes 22 beds for behavioural health and 14 for medical capacity. And third, accepted best practices to operate at 85% of capacity, to provide empty beds, to allow for the needed separation of inmate classifications, to handle temporary surges in occupancy, and to provide temporary housing for large arrest events. Now therefore be it resolved that the Whatcom County Council will hold a hearing on June 13th, 2017 to gather comments from the public on the sizing of the proposed new jail.
So would you like to move that as well?
I move approval of that.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second that.
Can I propose an amendment?
Okay, we have a second. Mr. Laus would like to speak. I saw his hand.
Yes, where it, in the resolution where it says that the Whatcom County Administration, I would request that the council listed as I have described it is it's the Whatcom County Administration, City of Bellingham Administration, and Mayor Scott Courthouse representing the small cities administrations are recommending this jail size. It's not something that I have done, it's something that we have done. And I would ask the council's indulgence to identify that this is the work of the administrations of the governments within Whatcom County.
Mr. Chair, I would accept that amendment.
Okay,
Then I have two amendments.
does staff have that amendment? Okay, let's take 1 minute at a time.
Okay.
So you have moved that amendment?
Well, I didn't need to, because
Okay, you're accepting it.
Yep.
It's a friendly amendment. Okay,
Question about that amendment?
so now we can move on to Mr. Donovan.
Okay, I had a question about that amendment, but whereas the size of a jail has three basic components, I keep coming back to this. There's four components to it, is what we do with the Division Street facility. And that's key in terms of plugging into any of these spreadsheets, what the projection is for the need for a new facility. And so I would propose an amendment where that would be a fourth bullet point on your final whereas, that determining a size for a new jail has four basic components, including a decision on whether Division Street will remain as a low-security facility.
And I would accept that.
Okay, so both of those amendments have been accepted by the maker of the motion. You guys have it, okay? Ms. Brenner?
I'm just, fanatic about how sentences word, or how sentence worded. The third bullet, I think it should say, accepted best practices require operation at 85% capacity, provision of empty beds, I should say adequate empty beds to allow for the needed separation of inmate classifications, handling temporary surges in occupancy, and providing temporary housing for large arrest events. It was just, there was something about that sentence, didn't?
So what did you want to change specifically?
That's what I wanted to make it, not what you have here, just changing the,
No, can you specify the specific change?
I did, I just said it. But here it says,
What words specifically do you want to
What
change?
words do you want to change specifically, he's asking?
accepted best practices, I did to do it, require operation at 85% capacity, provision of empty beds to allow for the needed separation of inmate classifications, handling temporary surges in occupancy, and provision of temporary housing for large arrest events. It's making it into a complete sentence or paragraph instead of kind of, it seems like, yeah, it's saying the same thing.
If
It's
the
just-
clerk captured it, I'm happy with it. So,
There was something there that didn't quite make sense to me.
What?
You said,
It requires all these things, so I had to
but
change
you had
it.
to take, then they have to take that out.
It
It's
would
not
say-
to provision.
I didn't say to provision, I said capacity, 85% of capacity, comma, provision of empty beds to allow for the needed separation of inmate classifications, comma, handling temporary surges in occupancy, comma, and provision of temporary housing for large arrest events. I'm just changing the verb to say it so it fits as a sentence rather than kind of just a piece. You know, all the others, you have that. You're stating, but this one doesn't do that, so it's my proposal. Doesn't change any of the intent.
where is Madam Clerk on this? Do you think you captured it, and do you want to read it back?
I've got it.
Okay.
You got it?
I can read it back if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you read it
Yeah,
back?
why
I
don't
think
you?
maybe you do a better job of reading it.
Okay. Accepted best practices require operation at 85% capacity, provision of empty beds to allow for needed separation of inmate classifications, handling of temporary surges in occupancy, and provision of temporary housing for large arrest events.
And I accept that.
All right, so we have a much amended, friendly amended motion. Mr. Mann?
My question is, how does this resolution interact with our resolution regarding the facility agreement?
Yeah.
Do you want, is your presumption that we will hold off on approving the joint facility use agreement until we've taken this input from the county residents?
If I may?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
So
Brown.
I think the suggestion, the logical suggestion would be to just address the language where we talked about the size of the jail and to just say that will be determined after the public hearing. So that we can forward this to the city of Bellingham, keep the wheels turning, and come back to them in 2 weeks, because they'll have to get it on their agenda anyway. And come back to them in 2 weeks and give them a response based on the public hearing.
I'm uncomfortable with that. I think I'd rather send them a completed document as opposed to filling in the blanks later. I understand why that would be useful as far as staying on schedule, but this is a huge issue that I think we need to send it as a package.
So if I may respond to that, I think we reached consensus on almost everything today with two primary, well, three issues. One was what happens with Division Street, and I like the proposed language that you inserted in there. The second was where the location is going to be, and I think that's still we've left that as a question mark. But I think the really big issue here is the community, I feel, is going to demand an opportunity to talk about what they think the size of the jail is. It's the most controversial aspect of it. And I think it's beholden on us to give the community that opportunity. So that's why I'm not comfortable putting a number down here, any number down here, until after having given the community an opportunity to speak to that issue.
So then, if I may continue
You may.
just back and forth a little bit, so then I guess that means you would consider comments, or you would consider a much lower size or a much greater size than what we narrowed it down to today?
I will vote for a size that the preponderance of evidence convinces me is the right size, and what I don't like is picking a number. Like my nature is to consider things, to really look at all the different issues and weigh them, and sometimes that takes longer, but I want to hear from all sides on this issue and come up with the right number. The best number we can come up with. There'll never be a right number, but there'll be one number that is, at least from the community's perspective, is better than other options.
You know, our public hearings are great and aren't always filled with new information or evidence that we haven't seen before. If it's a public hearing in order to gain new information, that seems like a hope that may not be realized. Maybe there is new information out there, but we have been talking about this a lot for a while and in the public, and we've gotten a lot of input. We might get opinions, we might get a lot of opinions, which would be fine, but I'm just not sure we're going to get a lot of new data or information. A lot of this is so scientific and technical, and a lot of it is art, and as opposed to science as well, I guess. But I feel like we got it to a pretty reasonable range today, subject also to this 150-bed issue out at the work center. I guess I'm conflicted. I am conflicted because I do want the public to continue to weigh in on this, but I'm not sure this specific data point is the best, will be best resolved in a public hearing, maybe.
Well, the other groups that I would like to hear from is we've had I don't recall having feedback on the size number from any of the task forces that we have asked to provide us with information. And I understand that the Vera Institute was supposed to, initially was supposed to provide a recommendation for this too. And I'd like to hear their number as part of this process.
I don't think the Vera Institute I don't think that's actually part of their task to come up with a number. I think their task was to identify opportunities for improvement, but I think, again, we sort of kept them on a short leash as far as getting involved in what can be a political debate. They're going to give us ideas about improvements and changes we can make, but I don't think they're going to weigh in on the size of a new jail facility. All right, well, let me just circle back to one other issue, and then I know there's a lot of other hands up. I'm sorry. If I could, though, just if we go the route that you're suggesting of having a public hearing, I would probably want to advocate for waiting to send the facility use agreement until we had that number. I'm open to different opinions on that, but that's my gut reaction.
Mr. Donovan.
I support the idea of having a public hearing, but I share Mr. Mann's sense that it's a public hearing. It's not a analysis or a presentation of new data. Maybe we get some new information, but I want us, and so we could maybe move that forward, but I want us to put real numbers into this thing now, if not soon, if not months ago. I'll repeat what I said earlier. I think the numbers that Mr. Mann amended are still far too high. I've got concerns with this, but I mean, if we're going to start moving this forward, we've had a lot of time to talk about these numbers, and putting it off further, I don't think sends a signal to anybody about where we're at on this. And if it's going to go on the ballot, I think it's really important that, would we have that discussion now? We'll wait to have another public hearing, have the discussion. I can tell you exactly what I want in terms of numbers, and, but I think we need to hammer something down in the agreement, and then if we get responses in a public hearing on the 13th, that's, people have something to respond to.
Yeah, I agree with both Mr. Brown and Mr. Mann. I think that it's important. I think the data point we haven't got is out there. It's our public that we need to hear from. And I really want to hear from the public. And I agree with Mr. Mann that sending this as with a blank number, it really doesn't accomplish anything at all. I think we need to hold a public hearing, come up with what we think is the best number we come up with, and then proceed down the road with the facility use agreement. Mr. Sadoo's name. Mr. Sadoo.
You know, this resolution, jail use resolution, which have been drafted by the representative from the small cities and Bellingham mayor and county administration, it really means that they are privy to what they have discussed. And our purpose of approving it today is that the county administration can put this thing back to their legislative bodies to vote on it, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose we are trying to do it tonight, that allow them to take it back to each city council and say, vote on it. But it's not complete. Like, you know, if you look at the individual city councils, they're looking for what they vote on. They vote on something incomplete. And they go and vote on it, and then something changes here. It's really doesn't make sense to me that until we take the task and decide that. And to decide that, if we hear from public, I think they need to make their input. Like, let's see what people have to say. But I have another point I want to make, and I've been involved only for a couple of years, but I've been reading the history of this jail. For last 15 years or whatever, 10 years, we are mixing way too many things into it. The way I analyze this thing, first thing is, this jail is not workable, we need a new jail. I mean, we have to really go step by step and make up our mind. One thing is that I hear more or less consensus, the current jail is actually life sentence to the people who work there, because other people are there only for a month or two and they leave. But the people who work there, they work there for next 10 years. So I think, and the people who are being held there, those conditions are not best or terrible. Now, the suggestion we get from people, let's fix that and spend the money. Yeah, it's a good suggestion, but my question back to public is, we spent $40 million on this, something like you have a 100-year-old house and you're trying to fix it and all this, and then you get 10 years out of that. Then there will be a new council, there will be a new administration sitting and discussing this again. I mean, you know, we can kick the can down the road. We have done that since year 2000. You know, we built this Division Street, we have done this, we have done that, and study and all this. We are not making decisions. I think that's a cop-out. A couple of more things. Sorry, I'm going to take 5 minutes here. The other issue is size of the jail and how to fund it. Those are the 2-3 things we need to do. So we have to make up our mind that we do need a jail, then we to go to the next step, how do we do that? But one more thing which really clouds the issue, and it's a very emotional issue, everybody is coming from their totally own perspective and own experience, and I'm not faltering anybody, and everybody is right in their perspective to do that. What has happened since we eliminated the mental institutions, the legislature has given a non-funded mandate to the counties. You look after them. There's no money. It's an issue. We are the last line of defense, means county. We can't ignore that because these people are sitting right in front of us. And there is no money for it. Now, how come mental institution, behavioral health has become a jail issue? We accept that it has become jail issue because it fell in our lap. And now we have to do that. Now we heard proposal that we should do vocational education to people who are in jail. I was dean at Bellingham Tech. I'm so much fan of vocational education. But are we saying you come to the jail first, go do something wrong, come to the jail, then we'll make you a welder. Then we'll make you an electrician. I mean, you know, like we're waiting for people to come to the jail and then give them education and call it a cost of incarceration. I think that, I mean, we really have to have a cool heads and think about what is our problem and what the solution we are looking for. We are finding several ills of our society or several issues in our society, and we are taking it on to jail and making it so difficult to make a decision. I think we all need to really look at it. Those issues people have brought up are real. But are they really related to the jail and the funding of the jail? And so I really look at it, I think there's a lot of other issues attached to the main issue we have as a community. And when we don't get what issue we want to solve, we call jail is a bad thing. I think that is a central to our decision making, and that's the reason we were not able to make a decision in 2015. Public wasn't able to make a decision in 2015. We didn't make a decision in 2008. We didn't make a decision when we approved the last time money. And that became a part of the general fund. And 0.1%. And that's totally forgotten. Actually, people paid money to build a jail. So I think that we should really concentrate on the need for a jail and how we're going to do that. And rest things should be secondary, and we should look at it. I'm not against that, but putting them as a primary, that this is a homeless situation solution, and then jail is secondary, I think it's upside down. That's how I look at this problem.
Mr. Brown.
So I don't have a problem with delaying approving the rest of this, as Mr. Mann suggests. I think it might be useful, though, to forward this to the City of Bellingham and say, this is how far we got, and these are the unresolved areas, and we're going to hold more hearings so that they can at least review what we've done.
And maybe even then we could do that, with the substitute version, we could hold the hearing on the substitute version of the facility use agreement instead of just a hearing on the jail size, or do you want to limit it specifically to jail size, like actual
Well, I
beds?
think the two issues that are unresolved are the jail size and the location. And I'd actually even suggest that we should invite testimony for people to they want to speak to the location issue as well. We should give them an opportunity for that.
Well, then maybe we should finalize a version of the facility use agreement that we're comfortable with, and then send it to the other cities, and then have a hearing on it on the 13th. And they can comment on any part of it.
Well, again, my reluctance is that to put any numbers in there for the jail now that I think, you know, have been produced without the full public process is something I'm reluctant to do. Because once you put any numbers in there, you know, they start to
I
carry.
agree,
They start to carry momentum.
That's why I changed
like
them
you.
today.
You've done this before.
Yeah, right. So, you know, then let's not send anything. Let's just, you know, I would wait.
Okay, we're going to slow it back down and come back to the motion that's on the table, which is the resolution as friendly amended 3 times, I believe.
Yep.
And is there any other comments on that specific area?
Yeah, based on that last interchange, I will not support this if we are not going to put hard numbers in this. If this is to punt a discussion that I've been waiting for months about the size of the jail, I won't support this thing. I mean, I could do them together, but not if we're going to just leave these numbers blank.
What if we're just gonna hold this
Just going to hold it.
in committee until we have our hearing?
And you don't get bathroom breaks or food or anything.
What's the timeline then about when we?
2 weeks.
2 weeks to say
You're going to start reading that into the public record?
One more box, but I couldn't carry it. Yes. Go ahead, Ms.
You
Brennan.
know, you like him better, do them first.
Okay, Mr. Weimer.
Oh, you like me better?
I like you better.
Of course he does, he doesn't want me eating any more chocolate.
I guess I have a little different perspective, and while I don't have a problem having a public hearing, I would rather have it on whatever we're planning to send forward. And so I'd like to finalize this and then have a public hearing, because I think who we really need to hear from is our partners, the legislative bodies of the small cities in the city of Bellingham. What I'm hearing from across the street at Bellingham, they're very fearful that we're going to go too small and they're going to face booking restrictions again in 4 or 5 or 6 years. So, you know, we've provided a range in here with the work we did today. I can't imagine that a public hearing on the size is going to give us any magic number that 385 is better than 415. So what we need agreement is with the partners on this where we're closer than we have before. So I would rather come up with what we like on this, send it forward to the cities, and if we want to have a hearing in the meantime that may help inform them, that would be fine. But I don't want to put this on hold any longer than possible because we're losing time. And we'll be here in a month saying we still don't know how to make up our minds if we don't move forward.
Ms. Brennan.
Okay. I am fine with what we received from the administration. I really appreciated some comments this evening because I have been thinking this for a while. I would just like to be sure, however our jail is built, when we're talking about that size, that there's way more ability for people with mental illness and people with medical, or I should say mental health issues, because I consider substance abuse a mental health issue. It's either mental health or it's medical. And those two things, I've never felt like we had enough beds for what I see as that kind of problem. And as somebody with a mental illness, I'm very sure there's a huge amount of people who are incarcerated with mental health issues. And I just feel it's so important that, you know, I was very touched by the person who talked about her son committing suicide. She blamed it on the prison or the jail or what. When I was young, I attempted suicide, and I think there's all kinds of very complicated reasons why people even attempt it. I think it's easy to blame it on the jail or blame it on something else, but I see mental illness as a very complicated issue, and I think it's probably totally possible to allow more of those beds to be for mental illness and medical, rather than just saying that these are all for this and we can only have this many. And I'm not seeing, does the sheriff or the executive, do you guys feel that it's possible to work on the amounts of beds for mentally ill people or mental health issues and the beds for medical reasons? Could we have flexibility there?
Well, first off, I would say, and even in our existing jail, we have mental health professionals, and to the
Right.
best of our ability, we treat the whole of the population. What's, exciting for me, if exciting is the right word, if we were able to put a new facility up through our needs assessment that DLR did.
There was a needs assessment.
And the whole process, the approximately $800,000 that we spent on the capacity needs, the space needs, and the design narratives and the cost estimates related to that. We have a dedicated, a 22-bed wing that people that have some severe mental health issues, that we'll be able to segregate them into a portion of the jail to be able to provide more appropriate treatment. So that's an increase of 22 beds for us, because right now we have none. Plus, we'll have obviously the medical facility for intake that we'll be able to help people out with. So,
But since this is going to be pods, I'm
Right.
assuming it still is, can we, sometimes there'll be
if in
a
the
lot more
future, if in the future we decided that we needed to have 2 dedicated pods, one for male and one for female, to be able to make that happen, yes, this particular site is expandable, and I would anticipate that over the next years that we are in charge of doing that we would be able to expand to it if we needed to be.
That's not what my question is.
Or if, in terms of the classification that we come in, if the sheriff wanted to increase the number of mental health beds within the facility,
Yes.
within the existing capacity, that's just a
That's
matter of
doable.
moving people around. And that's the beauty of this particular design. As you know, you hired Design to Last to go through and do a study of our existing jail, and because of its linear function, we're never going to be able to achieve that in our existing jail,
Right.
if you believe the professionals. So that's I think one of the exciting things for me is that I don't want to build a new jail. That's not my goal in life. Is just to fix a problem. And the way I believe that we fix it is to build the new jail. But it's going to give us so much more opportunity.
But one other thing I wanted to speak to, I didn't vote for the LaBounty site. I think I was the only one to vote against it, and somebody spoke to it. I did support the downtown site, but since then, I've done a whole lot of research about, and I don't mean about giving people, becoming electricians and engineers and all that. I just feel that there's so much ability to help people be more productive and do things that show. It used to be on TV, I don't even think it's on anymore, called Pit Bulls and Parolees. I mean, watching the people in that, work with animals, with abused animals, and really help them. And I am so impressed, but they needed a large enough area to do it. The other thing I really would love to see is having enough property where there can be, gardens to be able to grow food. I think both those things, and there's probably way more other things, but both those things to me are very inspiring. When I do either of those, I'm inspired. So I just feel that would give people more ability to feel human, to relate to what you can do to make beings, whether they're human or animal or whatever, better. And I just feel like those are the kinds of things that are real productive, and you do need adequate land to do it. I've never been wedded to LaBounty, but LaBounty has enough property. I just don't, I don't want to see it here anymore. And I understand that, I think everybody who spoke tonight, I might be wrong, but I think pretty much everybody was from Bellingham. But again, I might be wrong, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. I think there's a difference with how people around the county view the ability to get to and from the jail. And in Bellingham, of course, I think they would believe that it's the closest thing. But out in the county, I think it's a different attitude. And my recollection was that the city of Bellingham was one of the biggest reasons that that thing failed by a very small amount, but that it failed, they didn't like the structure. And now my understanding is the structure has been changed to where it's acceptable to the mayor. I'm not saying to all of Bellingham, but to the mayor and the small cities too. So I do think there have been, quite a few changes. And I do want to speak to the one thing the fellow said about, or somebody said about using the Division Street. It was hard enough for us to get them, the city, to okay Division Street for that work release type facility. And it hasn't been a problem. I wouldn't even think of ever considering that without the city agreeing that that could be for a regular jail. And I'm not sure you'd get much support for that over there. So we've got a lot of unanswered questions. I'm just saying, I have no problem with what we received. I just would like to see the flexibility, and I'm hearing that it has flexibility, so.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Lowes, I know you've negotiated this agreement with Mayor Linville of the City of Bellingham. Was it specific approval from her and or the council, the Bellingham Council, on the numbers?
I can't speak for the Bellingham Council. I wasn't at their work meeting on Monday. There was 2 council members, Bellingham council members, on the jail task force. Gene Knudsen is my understanding, and this could be corrected, as I'm not saying that I'm there, but that he basically is all right with it. My understanding that Pinky is all right with the size also, Councilmember Vargas, excuse me, and Councilmember Knudsen.
Who was the second one?
And, but I do know that the mayor has accepted this, and that Scott Courthouse, and we've also been to the Small Cities Caucus meetings, and the rest of the mayors are supportive of the 440 as being a compromise from what the DLR group did in their needs assessment, which was a little bit larger than what we designed the 521-bed jail for. But we all felt, in consideration of the good work that's being done, but also laying on top of that the county's going to grow approximately 30% in the next 30 years, if you believe our comp plans, that 440 plus or minus that percentage was a compromise to the citizens, who I had one the other day saying is that 440 seemed like it was too small if you're going to spend the money, to other people in the community that say, hey, 440 is way too big. It's one of these things that I believe that the community needs us at this particular time to make a decision on. Because as you mentioned is there's never going to be a number that any of us are going to be able to pick with any certainty of the exact number that we're going to need.
So I would like to extend the invitation on this, not only to the citizens to testify as to what they think the right size of the jail is, but also Mayor Courthouse as representative of the small cities, and the City of Bellingham, either through the council or through ideally from this Bellingham City Council. But I think all those parties need to give us their opinion as what their, what is their upper number, what's their lower number, because there's a lower number for all those jurisdictions that is too low for them to achieve their goals, and there's an upper number that those jurisdictions are not comfortable with either. So I still want to have that public hearing, and to include the task forces, the Vera Institute. It's just too important a number to just pick out of the air.
Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, I'm really uncomfortable with any of this speaking on behalf of people on the Bellingham Council, or particularly about the size, or the mayor. I mean, if they could come to a hearing, we could hear that. But
you said the mayor's.
Look, he also mentioned 2 members of the task force that Councilmember Buchanan and I served on, and we were instructed not to talk about the size until it came up at the last minute. So I wouldn't take their presence on that committee as endorsing the size, because that committee was not about the size. And I think we're going down a slippery slope here, speaking on behalf of other elected officials.
Well, and sorry if I may respond, I don't want to speak on behalf of
Right, no, so it'd be good to have
I'm inviting them to formally tell us either in presence or person or by letter, what their feelings are.
Mr. Sadoo?
I think in our discussion earlier today that we came up with the number 400 plus minus 10%. It gives a really wide range. It allows the other legislative bodies to express themselves. It actually covers the range which has been suggested in the document, and that was a good compromise. And the second thing is we have to make a decision. I think we have had 20 years of this thing. Nobody can guarantee me that they come up with a number and that will be all right. No matter what we do, like 40 beds cannot make a jail as a mega jail or just right jail. 40 beds, like if we were proposing 800 beds or something, I can understand that. Boy, that's a huge jail, and we will make efforts to fill it up. Like there are issues in bigger counties and bigger cities and things happening in Atlanta or Chicago. We are not Atlanta or Chicago. We are a small county with 200,000 people, with probably be more like 275,000 people, and 40 people. You think that people will go out to fill it up, and it's a huge effort to make 40 people more come in or 40 people less come in? It's not going to make any difference in the operational cost if even there are beds empty. You know, I have experience of running operations, I can tell you that. This is not that 40 more people going to make it that, oh, we are gouging people, we are making it a jail industry. All these words are being used. I think we need to just calm down and think about it in more real terms, that what is best for our community. Best for our community is that we can be 20, 30 beds too many or 20, 30 beds too little. And I have no way of gauging that 30 years from today, that how accurate I am. And if anybody else has a better suggestion, so my suggestion for the council is that we move this on with that 400 plus minus 10%, and if we want to have public input, I don't mind hearing from public, and I think that it's a good thing to hear from public. And if there is a entirely different result or something, we can inform. And I would like to ask Mr. Laws that, are you amenable to something like that?
I'd have to do some serious thought to it based on the work that's been done by all of our consultants over the years, and based on the data that I have and with where it's at. The challenges that I would have, biggest challenges what I would have would be the siting of the jail. We went through a very public process with that. We've spent $6 million on the property. We've spent another $1 million going through an EIS. And if we leave that onto the table, I'm assuming that we cite an essential public facility, that process would have to totally be recreated and gone through again. I would have a real challenge, probably just getting the personal motivation to go through it again at that particular time. So that's one challenge. The millions of dollars that we've spent getting ourselves to this point, trying to trudge forward to a decision, I'd be real challenged to say we need to start over on that end of it. Secondly, the size of the jail, 400 beds plus or minus 10%, that would be bringing it down to 360. And then if you want to keep the work center open, that means you're building a jail that's smaller than the one we have today, because 360 less 150 is 210. We have 212 beds right now. So I'd have a real challenge, I think, at that particular time, trying to justify to the community, based on a 30% population increase in the next 30 years, that probably would be the wise thing to do, even though at the end of the day we'd have we'd have, but a 210-bed facility on that particular site, it is an expensive site. We know that. It's a large piece of property, it's expandable, and I've never shied away from the fact that the civil work that needs to be done on that site is more extensive than it would be if we put it down here in Bellingham's Art Center. And, you know, we could go through and purchase a couple blocks more and make this happen down here if that's what we wanted to do. But it's an expensive site, and we also want to put the core mechanical and the physical plant in so that it would be expandable to the future. So the second thing that I would have a challenge with is maintaining now the keeping the Iron Gate facility open and building a smaller facility out there, because you still have security issues, you've got kitchen issues, you've got classification issues. The report that you folks requested and we spent a couple $100,000 on last year is saying that the Iron Gate facility was built for short-term to medium-term usage. It's starting to show its age at this particular time because it's not designed to where it's at. So we've got costs in that. So some of the details that you guys are moving very quickly on are, I think, ones that we've spent, the administrations have spent a lot of time on. And I would really have to see the body of your work in the changes to the JFUA and to what you're doing to say whether or not I can be supportive to the rest of the community of whether I would be on board with it. I think that what we've put forward is a good bit of work. That doesn't mean that it's exactly right and that some tweaks can be made to it, but to go from, you know, down to building a facility with some of your suggestions from earlier today that's smaller than what we have today, I would have some challenge with it. So I believe that, I think it was Mr. Weimer that said is that the city of Bellingham has concerns with that we're going to go too small, and I know that the small cities have articulated the same thing. They're concerned, and the reason that they don't want to act on anything is because they don't necessarily know where you guys are at with it, and they aren't going to give you an answer until you guys commit. Because I don't think anybody wants to go through this process again.
I don't know exactly what's on the floor, but we're talking about size, so let's talk about size. I don't remember anybody this afternoon proposing something smaller than the existing facility. Let me continue. I mean, if we want to talk about size, and we accept that there's going to be a 30-odd% increase in population, if we assumed we need a facility right here, right now, that was 240 beds, and we put out the OFM mid-range population increase, that would be, we'd need in 2047 a 310-bed facility. I mean, that's not smaller than what we have now. That's planning for the future at a rate of growth that's consistent with OFM is saying. That's assuming, you know, we do something else with those 150 beds at Division Street. So those aren't, you know, this is not, I didn't hear anybody talking about something smaller. It's what the starting point is that we should be planning around. Smaller than the existing, smaller than the proposal, yes. Smaller than the existing facility downtown. I did not hear that, and I think.
Well, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. What I believe that the motion was a 400-bed jail plus or minus 10%. Yes. So if you go to the minus, that's 360. Then it was, well, we want to consider keeping the work center open, and it has 150 beds. So 360 less 150 is 210.
I think it's plus.
No, it's minus.
It's minus.
No, it's minus.
It's minus. That's what came up this morning is minus. So that means that if we did what at the very, very low ends of what is being proposed for the motions, Our existing jail here has got 212 beds in it. So all we're doing is building a new jail the exact same size and not planning anything for the future. So that's where I have a concern moving that back to Bellingham and to the small cities is that you've lowered the low end beyond what I think, well, I'll be honest with you, it's below what I'm comfortable with. I'll say it that way. I won't speak on the behalf of anybody else.
Mr. Sadhu?
The way I understood was that that was a backstop for building a jail with 360 and still keeping the 150. You know, like if I reverse your argument, right? That's how I understood was that we go propose a 360 bed and then 2 years from now, a year from now, we say, we're gonna keep this 150 as well. So that will make it 510, right?
So
that was the idea to me. That was the thing to stop that.
Looking at it a different way, this morning we had 310 people in custody. If you use the 80% number on that that means today we need to build a 389 bed jail if we're going to run it at a 20% vacancy rate, which gives us the ability to classify and move people around the facility as efficiently as possible. Now, I believe 90% is probably more likely in terms of a workable number, but you know, 390, because the numbers this morning don't take into account anybody that's in Yakima that the cities has over there, or any of our tribal members that we have throughout the state at this particular time too. Both of those communities have identified that if they had the preference, they'd like to put their people in Whatcom County Jail. So again, I'm going to come back to it is that I've done a lot of thought on it, and it is just a number. I understand that, but the 440 plus or minus the what was it, 3%, I believe works out better than a 400 plus or minus 10%, because I believe it. One thing is I think the push is going to be to go smaller and smaller and smaller as we move forward. If we continue down the path, and
how many people in Yakima?
I don't know, but we had 20,000. Bellingham had just under 20,000 bed days there last year, so 12 to 18. It's gone up and down.
12 to 18 in
Right.
a given day. Okay, so I can add that in, put this up to 250. I can't, hang on. I'll come back to you.
But thank you for the question, Council Member Sadhu, because I think that it is ultimately the decision that needs to be made here is one that the administrations are going to try to be able to convince the other legislative bodies throughout the community to be supportive of. The cities are coming at it from a little different way. They know that the county has an obligation for our felons, and they want to have adequate access, not an unreasonable size, because I think that we're all appreciative of the work that's being done, but we want it to be reasonably sized so that there's 10, 12 years worth of usage, and possibly even a lot longer than that, based on our current populations.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Brown?
So listening very carefully to Mr. Lowes' numbers, when he takes into account the number of beds in the jail, the number of the beds in the work centre, the number of people that we've got incarcerated elsewhere, and then the ratio of, let's call it 85% occupancy, Mr. Lowes is correct. We are, in this current proposal, the lower end is less than the capacity we have today.
Mm-hmm. Unless you consider Division Street.
No, that's including Division Street, because you've got to count the beds. If you're adding Division Street back as a building, but remember the proposal, the way we changed the resolution today was that Division Street is taken out, where the numbers that we've got in the front of this in section 3 are the numbers on that are based on the assumption that Division Street is removed from the pool.
I don't like that assumption.
Okay, but that's what is being presented. That's what
when we start,
that's what we voted on.
when this is on the floor, we could
Okay, but that's the document we've got in front of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not advocating for one number or another, I'm just, not advocating for one number or another. I just want us to be clear that that's what the numbers are we're talking about at the moment, is the numbers based on the assumption that Division Street is repurposed for something else other than inmates. So.
Mr. Sadoo.
I was going to say that in relation to the same thought, you said the cities are coming from different angle. Of course, they're coming from different angle because they're getting some extra money to their general fund. I mean, that's a reality out there. You know, it does allow them to do that. And that's how the law is, that's how it is. So I just wanted to point that out, that their interest is that they don't have a smaller jail so that they have to they don't have enough adequate spaces for their people who are in, in the justice system. At the same time, they're getting a little boost. In the name of the jail, they get their extra revenue. So, well, that's how our law is, so.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
I would just like to suggest, in the interest of moving this along, perhaps it would be better if we voted on this one, voted on the idea of holding a public hearing, and then voted on what we're going to present, whether we're going to move forward the next document.
So if you just wanted to vote on
this resolution here, which is just a
not
resolution.
necessarily strictly on the sizing, but just a public hearing.
Well, I would say the size and the location, but, I mean, it can be on the public hearing.
I kind of like Mr. Weimer's idea of looking at the whole agreement.
And presenting that for a public hearing? Okay.
This for a public hearing? Is this what?
I don't know where you are procedurally.
That's a good question, because it's kind of cart and horse.
We got amendments on the first proposal. We have a motion with amendments on that.
The motion we have before us right now is this resolution to hold a public hearing on the sizing of a proposed new Whatcom County jail. That's what we have as amended with our 3 amendments.
Right.
So, if you're comfortable with that language still?
Well, I still, I guess it really does depend on what we do with this one.
Yeah, it is.
So if you say it's the cart before the horse, so we flip them the other way around.
Well, we could do that.
And I withdraw my motion pending the outcome.
Because we've already been talking about this, we could just continue that discussion.
So
We can always move this.
So I will withdraw my motion for this pending the outcome of the vote on that. Does that make sense?
Okay, so now we are motionless, as we have been for quite a while now.
Please don't laugh, it is a technical term.
So, okay, well, Mr. Brown, would you like to make a motion on this resolution?
I think I'll leave that up to Mr. Mayor.
All right, well, I will move the substitute version of the joint facilities use agreement as amended in Finance Committee, and I would move that for approval.
Wait a sec.
Do we have a
It's
second?
beige, I think.
Yeah, this beige color.
The brown version.
Light brown, tan.
Light brown, tan, khaki.
Khaki.
Khaki. Khaki version.
Khaki. A slight salmon tone.
We've been at this for too long.
Okay, Mr. Mann is moving approval of this.
So,
And is there a second?
I have a question, so somebody second.
Doesn't have a second.
No second.
What?
Has to have a second.
Okay, I'll second it because I have a question.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what else to do if that's my question. This one. I'm sorry. This one, the tan one, is, you said, I thought the green one was the one that was changed in committee.
This reflects those changes.
So the number changed to what? I was there, I just.
It's on page.
I don't, for some reason, I don't know where mine is. That's a new one, and oh,
Yes,
wait a
there's
minute.
numerous.
I have to-
There you go. Success.
Okay. And the changes that were made today, are those the blue, the changes?
Yeah, the blue ones.
Okay.
I have a
give me
couple more
second.
changes I'd make.
Can I propose an amendment?
Someone says, anyone seconded it?
Barbara seconded.
Okay.
I
Barbara
seconded it, but I want to finish reading what other blue is,
Why
how
don't
much?
you read while Todd
Yeah,
proposes?
I want to bring attention to recital 10, and this relates to the Division Street thing. There's two issues here. Is one, I don't think we're going to sell it. Two, it's not going to end up generating a lot of revenue for the programs that are mentioned there. So a proposed amendment to the county will not sell or transfer Division Street property when the new jail is completed, period. Delete all language until the blue thing and say when the facility is retrofitted as an adult correction facility, the number of beds and then new language will count towards the numbers in recital number 3.
Okay, so can I comment on that?
Yeah.
I have no strong objection to that outcome that you're proposing. However, I do believe that in the spirit of some of the stuff that's come up at the task force meetings, you know, we're working on this public involvement plan for that property out there as a crisis triage facility.
That's not true.
So for us to put in there now, though, that we're going to make it, you know, more of a permanent jail facility, I think jumps out ahead of that public participation plan and sort of announces some intentions and that may not go over very well, you know, when at the same time as we're trying to engage that community and get their buy-in, if we are also in a separate document saying, and by the way, here's what we're going to do there, it's even more significant than the outreach plan.
Well, in addition to that, the whole, what happens to that facility issue is that there's really not any strong language in here about funding facilities and programs that support the goals of treating adults with behavioral health programs, except this pretty weak language about selling a piece of property we're probably not going to sell. So maybe that's another recital that would be cities and counties will dedicate no less than some fixed amount of money for these programs. Because I think one of the reasons this didn't pass last time was the issue, the size, the location. One of the big things was, are we dedicating any money to behavioral and mental health stuff? You're passing this tax and you don't know what's going to happen with the money. The fourth thing that was at issue was the finance agreement between the cities and the county, and that we fixed. But the size is 476, the location, we don't really know. There's nothing concrete saying we're going to be spending money on behavioral and mental health stuff, except we're going to sell this building we're not going to sell. So,
you know, that is a well-articulated position. You are correct. That is one of the big reasons I didn't support the jail last time, because I felt like we completely ignored programming for those situations you described. So I'll have to think some more on that.
Mr. Sadhu?
I totally support that we should strengthen that wording somewhere, somehow, like you're proposing, and there should be a firm program. As the life of the jail, there should be a parallel program that which is funded, not that, 2 years later, we come back and say, well, there's no funding for that, so we're going to stop that. I think that's not a fair thing to do.
and I'll grant, it's not easy to come up with language that would say X amount of money from this tax will definitely go to behavioral and mental health things, but, and we had some discussion of this in that task force group, but it's assumed that the cities are going to have some extra money freed up to do these things, but we're not explicitly telling the voters this is what you get, and I think that was one of the reasons it didn't pass last time, in addition to the size and the location.
I have an idea.
Executive Laos?
I'm going to hold my comments for now, thank you.
Mr. Sadhu?
I think that if we put a wording that there will minimum of 32 beds will be adequately funded and maintained for the triage center by the county.
Ms. Brenner?
Maybe I'm just not remembering it correctly, but I thought we already committed to the triage center. I thought that was what we were going to do with the Division Street property.
We have been on an ongoing path to augment the amount of beds that we have at the triage center. I think Councilmember Mann's on the Behavioral Health Organization, and the group has been working diligently to try to pull the funds together to make that happen. As you know, we have $3 million committed within our behavioral health sales tax now that's in reserve for that, and then we just got another $2.5 million from the state. It's going to be real interesting through this budget cycle whether or not the state has a commitment to continue funding the operations of the facility as they have in the past. And I think that that's going to be the biggest challenge that we're going to have in the future. I'm not saying that it's not needed, and I'm not saying that I'm not committed to it, but it's kind of a little bit of a cat and mouse game right now. You know, we go to the point is we commit for it, we commit for the operations of it, and I don't know where that money would come from to be able to add another 16-bed facility within our existing resources, but we need to let this play out at the state. I do believe that from everything that I read, the Senate, the House, and the governor are all supportive of what we have going on, and it looks like it's full steam ahead to make that happen. And the only thing that I would say to comment to that is to restrict the transfer of any portion of that facility to another governmental entity down the road within the jail facility use agreement, if indeed we build the new correctional facility to incorporate both facilities in there. It would be a shame if we had a big open warehouse that by ordinance we couldn't do anything with, and whether that be for storage or whatever, because the whole purpose of putting the word may in it, that we may sell or transfer, is that it would give us options in the future to make sure that we're fully utilizing the building, but it would also guarantee to the cities who have contributed part of the existing 1% to be able to pay for that is so that we could basically reward the whole of the community putting that money back to work.
Mr. Donovan, then Mr. Brown?
Yeah, and I appreciate that that would complicate those sorts of things, but so taking the sale or non-sale of that property aside, it's not just the triage thing in terms of like putting something to the voters where they're knowing they're getting money spent. And this is page 51 of our packet when you have the comparison chart, on number 16, prevention and diversion programs need to be funded. Revenue from sale of the work center was the old proposal. This one is that plus new sales tax above capital payment, and then cities receive approximately 1.45 million annually. Page 51, I'm sorry. 51. Page 51 of the packet.
Yep.
But what we just saw earlier today with the money that was freed up by the EMS levy into the general fund, I don't know where that money's necessarily going to go. I mean, that could go to, looking at a proposal we had earlier, that could go to general fund transfers for general administration buildings. And
which monies are you talking about?
So there's an RCW that's going to constrain how the money that's freed up in number 16 is
utilized by the cities, correct?
Yeah, but in terms of putting this on the ballot, how do we tell people that this money is going to prevention and diversion programs? And that, I brought this up in the task force meeting, and I know it's a hard thing to package, but how do voters know that the 1.5 million annually that Bellingham will be receiving in this extra sales tax above capital payments that's supposed to fund prevention and diversion programs is going to fund prevention and diversion programs?
Well, the ballot measure, of course, is restricted by a certain number of words, and it's tough to be able to put it in, but you typically go to a referral in the back, and if we'd ask the auditor to put the whole JFUA into the document, I'm sure just about every voter would read every word of it.
But where in the JFUA does it say how that $1.45 million is going to be spent on prevention and diversion programs?
It doesn't restrict the cities from spending it to anything other than what's allowed under the RCW. And it doesn't restrict the county from spending it to anything that's other than allowed that's under the RCW. And the RCW is for, I have to read it exactly, but.
A lot of stuff.
Considered, would authorize the sales and use tax at a rate of 0.2% to be used for the construction, maintenance, and operation of jail facilities and for adult correction programs, including medical and behavioral health facilities and programs, and for other public safety purposes, all pursuant to RCW 8214-450. It's very close to what the ballot measure said last year, and that's the restrictions that are placed on it.
The ballot measure last year was the EMS
or
one.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that had a lot of money go just anywhere.
Mr. Brown.
Two things. I'm assuming we would have a hard time dictating to the cities how they spend their portion of the money collected under that RCW. Is that your understanding?
The Mayor of Bellingham has been very adamant through the last 3 years that the money that they receive are going to be used for public safety purposes other than what they're going to pay for jail usage for. So they have their community policing program. They want, now obviously they have their electronic home monitoring. They have a whole plethora of opportunities in front of them that they want to use this money for their benefit, same as that the cities do, or the small cities do.
But we don't have the authority to dictate to them.
Well, obviously you can put something into the ballot or into the JFUA to ask for them to consider, but I don't believe that they want to be micromanaged with the monies that they have other than what's allowed in the RCW. It just pretty much as we probably would also when it came back and came down to it.
So back to the discussion about the work center.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little concerned about the proposal. I think you said that when the work center is converted into adult correctional facility, that implies that
the decision's made.
The intention is to do that as two separate facilities. And my concern is that there's going to be an operational cost, and in my experience, to provide one full-time employee 24 hours a day requires 5 FTEs. And perhaps the sheriff could give us an estimate as to what is the overhead required to run 2 facilities as opposed to 1 facility in terms of FTEs.
I can't give you any precise numbers on that tonight. We could try to come up with an estimate and get back to you, but the cost of operating 2 facilities, as we've been told by all these consultants' reports, is going to be substantially higher because there's a lot of redundancies in kitchen and medical services and staffing, control booths. So we'll try to come up with some estimates and perhaps may need some professional assistance for that as well.
If I was just going to pick a number out of the air, so forget all the other operational costs, how many extra staff do you think it takes you to run 2 facilities? 5?
I would
10?
I would be speculating probably somewhere in the area of 10.
Okay, and then is it fair to say the average cost is probably $100,000 a year fully loaded?
No, somewhat less than that. Probably about
80,000?
80, 85.
Okay. So that'd be $800,000 a year for 30 years.
Right.
And that's my concern, is that's another $24 million bucks.
The operating costs are going up no matter what.
No, but
So how much are they going up?
that's $24 million over the course of 30 years that we wouldn't spend just on labor.
And we rely, if we have a facility and we have our work program deputies there, we could rely on them to provide extra staffing in the jail if we have a problem, or we could use people, we could flex what they're doing with more readily than we can't do it at all when they're located at 2 sites miles apart.
And again, my statement is more for the purpose of making sure we're clear what we're asking for when we say we'll run 2 separate facilities. There will be additional costs, and there'll be permanent costs.
And that's highlighted in these various reports that were done as well, the need to, and that was recognized when the council voted to open the interim work center. That's why it was designed as a 5 to 7 year program. It was temporary to deal with an emergency, and continuing that in perpetuity is going to be, from my perspective, very expensive.
And I would simply proffer the fact that running 2 facilities is certainly going to be more expensive than running 1 facility of the same capacity.
Undoubted.
Yeah.
Mr. Lyles?
I would just say that I believe that when we put the new facility in, to fully staff both facilities, we hired 21 people. That's my assessment of it. I'll double check it, but I believe it was 21 people is what it took to make that happen. By the time we put all of the transfer staff, we put the different shift sergeants on, and the 24/7 people, it was, and I think that's about how many we have over there right now.
There was 21 additional people.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Sadoo, then Ms. Brenner, then Mr. Donovan.
I was going to say that we're really belaboring this point of having 2 facilities, 1 facilities. We should decide it now. Once the jail is operational, new jail is operational, we're going to close it, and we'll think about how we're going to repurpose it. We are really splitting hair here, trying to say that we don't know that, that working 2 would be, how we're going to make it work for 2. I mean, we got to start moving and make decisions. And I think this is a very obvious decision that we have 1 facility, which is more central to the county, and we repurpose the Division Street place. That would be my decision.
Ms. Brenner?
I just want to make sure that we're talking about 2 different things here. I don't support having 2 jails, wherever they are. I don't support it. But I thought we were maybe going to use Division Street to build and enlarge the triage center.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Donovan?
Which means those revenues probably will not be there that are called out in recital 10 and the number 16 on page 51. I just want to make sure we have that out there.
What's not, where do we not have?
Sale of that facility. If we're going to be keeping it for other uses, not even the adult facility, the correction, or work center.
Triage, if we're not.
Yeah, we probably won't be selling it, so I don't know why we're counting that as revenue.
What
But
triage?
the other thing is, in terms of, yeah, it takes extra people, but how many extra people are we going to use because it's going to be in Ferndale versus downtown? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here that to create.
I would like to know what Tyler was going to say. It's getting,
One indication earlier was that if it gets transferred to another department, those revenues would go to these behavioral health. So we may not be selling the property or the location there or the interim work center, but we may repurpose it for general government purposes, and then that revenue, equal to the appraised value, would get transferred to the behavioral health as this agreement recognizes. The other point on that topic I'd like to recognize is recital number 11 was also very important in our negotiations with the city of Bellingham. And that's the recital that recognizes all the good work that the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force has been doing, and it recognizes the implementation of all of those once that's recommended, where possible, associated with it.
did you say number 11 or
Yeah,
page
recital number 11,
No,
which
no,
is
not
right
on
below the one that Councilmember Donovan's recognizing.
Yeah.
So what that
This is
says
11
is that.
here. Wait a minute, wait, I'm,
This 11 in this.
oh, in there. Oh, jeez, okay. I was in the packet. What page?
Mr. Sadoo?
I had the other thing, like we were talking about how cities should use their money, and I agree with Mr. Laus that it does not stop us from putting something in there, in the jail use agreement, that at least that the cities will share the cost of, because the people in the triage center are not only from the county. I mean, we will be serving the whole county, including city of Bellingham, including Linden and other people too. So we should actually ask them that they should contribute some part of their 40% to that. I mean, the law says that they have total ability, but it doesn't stop us from agreeing to something.
As I mentioned earlier today, at the work group, there's probably going to be proposals coming out of the Incarceration Prevention Task Force that are bigger than the county themselves. And to be able to implement those, we're going to need the help of all of the cities and jurisdictions to make that happen. And I think that that recital, and the reason that the mayor was adamant that it went in there, one is that we, county, were committed to it. But it doesn't say that. It says the parties to the agreement are committed to this. And that's the leverage I believe that we're going to have with the cities down the road is that we're going to be able to say is this is a really good idea, but this is not one that we can do on our own. And oh, by the way, you know, Bellingham, you've got an average of 1.8 million extra dollars per year for the life of the next 30 years, and we need your help to be able to make some of this happen. But it does tie together quite well, having the leadership of Bellingham and the small cities and the county involved with it, having a member of the Incarceration Prevention Task Force on that, and a requirement that we meet on a regular basis to continually reflect on the best model of services that we can provide for the community. So it's not committing future dollars to it, but it's coming as close as we really can in being able to identify the process that we're going to go through to ensure that the discussion continues and that the opportunities don't get pushed to the side as we move forward. So that it took Tyler, Brian from the city, and Mike from the city of Linden a long time, along with help from the leadership groups, to be able to come up with language that did what we felt to do the best job that we can is to commit to the community in future years that we're serious about it.
I have a quick comment on that. Only concern I would say I have is the institutional memory. What happens? The council changes, the executive changes, the mayors change, and if we do not really specify that this is the intent, like more clearly, it gets forgotten. It gets buried in the documents. New council comes in, they don't even know that what was decided until somebody just brings it up. I'm just suggesting that I like that. I read through that, the para 11. But if we can strengthen it a little bit, that where they agree to share cost of that, even just say share the cost of it, it makes it certain that there is expectation that they will be paying some money to that. That's my only concern is.
Well, we've gone through this thing in infinite detail and very painstakingly and very painfully to get to where we're at on it today. So if you have language that you wish to include in it, I'd suggest that you formulate the motion and see whether the council agrees. I think that I've gone as far as I can with it.
Okay, big surprise, we wandered off topic again. Mr. Donovan had proposed an amendment, and I don't know, did we get a second?
What was the amendment?
What was
See, that's how long ago it was. So let's get back to that.
Dana's got it. No Jill.
Can you read it?
There we go. The current motion from Councilmember Mann is to approve the substitute version of the jail facility use agreement as amended in Finance Committee. Yes?
Sounds right, and seconded by Ms. Brenner.
Correct.
Okay, and then
Then the amendment?
Mr. Donovan's amendment?
I didn't hear an amendment.
Yeah, what
Oh, I can
amendment?
try it. You want to
That's
try
what
it
I
again?
thought.
Well, it's not sounding like it's going anywhere, but the amendment was recital 10, as I had read it, the county will not sell the Division Street property when the new jail is completed, period. And then delete all the language until what is now in blue. And I had said, when retrofitted as an adult correction facility, the number of beds at the Division Street facility will count towards the numbers in recital 3. That was how I had read it.
Okay, does that motion have a second?
I'll second that. I just want to understand.
Okay.
It's
been
a little
seconded.
bit confusing.
Yeah, well, because I'm writing on the fly here, but that recognizing that it's not going to be sold, we've had a discussion that's maybe problematic in terms of what could be done with that in the future. And then trying to get those 150 beds or whatever it would end up being if retrofitted to count towards the numbers in whatever we put in recital 3.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, the problem I have is the way it came to us, I like, because it says whether we sell or transfer Division Street property when the jail's completed, that money or that property will support the goals of treating adults with, it should say, to reduce incarceration rates of adults with people with behavioral health problems. This way it's written says to me that property is going to be used, call it a triage center, whatever you want to call it. It's either we're going to use that property for a triage center or we're going to use the money from the proceeds if we sell it for the triage center. That's what I want to make sure we cover here, and I don't want it to be taken. I mean, the way you read it, it sounds to me like we could still use Division Street as another jail, and I don't want to do that.
That's what I was writing it at. And then I'd add another recital that cities and counties will dedicate no less than some amount of money, as mentioned in the table on page 51 in our packet, because I don't think even a one-off sale of that is going to generate that much money to fund these programs. We're kind of doing it on the hope that this extra money that goes to the cities will be used to fund prevention and diversion programs.
Well,
And I don't know the best way to write that, but yeah, I mean, the intent would be, it's a statement that we would be committed to,
A triage center. That's what I want it to be.
are they exclusive?
Well, yeah, this could be all kinds of programs that may or may not be effective. A triage center is a place that somebody can be housed safely and have their mental health issues and substance abuse issues cared for. And it would be a triage center is a completely different climate than a jail.
Well, I'm not saying to not do that.
No, but it says that, I mean, it's opening it up that it could be used for that, and I don't want to, that's what I don't support.
Mr. Mann?
I'm going to make a suggestion on process, because I think this is a good conversation that we're having. I think a lot of good questions are being asked, and options are being floated back and forth. I think that's really good. Typically, we don't do that at our evening session,
That's
on the
true.
fly. And maybe it's okay that we're on TV, people can see what it actually looks like to struggle with these issues. That has some benefit too. But I'm starting to realize that, this is, from a majority of the council, is not ready to move forward with this as presented, and perhaps it would benefit from a full committee discussion and/or that hearing that was requested by, or proposed by Councilmember Brown. And even though, like Mr. Sadhu said, he's pretty convinced about how he wants to go, and I was happy with what we had today, but there was some variation in there, you know, maybe we contemplate sending this to committee of the whole and have this hearing,
Committee of the whole.
and give ourselves a couple more weeks to do homework behind the scenes, which does need to happen all the time, and get clarity on these issues and what money and what revenues go where. I don't know what the rush is. I mean, I know what the rush is. I don't know what the immediate deadlines are related to the facility use agreement and how that plays into our ballot timeline, which is a concern for some folks.
Maybe Tyler knows the deadline to get on the ballot. Do you know the deadline to get on the ballot?
Yeah, Tyler Schroeder, if council turns in the packet, I included a timeline associated with both the resolution for the jail facility finance use agreement as well as the resolution needed for the ballot measure. So on page 52, there is a requested action today, May 30th. The deadline as articulated in this was June 13th council meeting for the resolution for the jail facility financing use agreement. And that was to allow for city council action to be done by June 30th. For the cities then have to make a decision on the JFUA prior to that June 30th. And the resolution for the sales and use tax ballot is by July 25th, and that's because it has to go to the auditor's office prior to August 1st. So that's the timeline as it walked out. I think it's important to understand the jail facility use agreement has been with the work group, and we've walked through all of the details associated with the group, with the agreement, excluding the size, because I think the Councilmember Donovan and Councilmember Buchanan had some questions in regards to that and recognized that was a decision that the council was going to be making. But the rest of the jail facility use agreement, that work group passed unanimously to move on to the county and the cities as it relates to the jail financing and the operations associated with it. So I think it's just important for the county council to understand that that process has happened since, I think, last September or October associated with it.
Mr. Mann, did you want to?
No.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I agree, Tyler, that what you said is totally right. But when this is being drawn, discussed and everything, it was a smaller group of people who were committed to that. You didn't have the burden of hearing the public. And we have that burden of hearing the public, and ultimately they are the ones who decide this thing, not 7 of us. We can put it on the ballot tomorrow, right? But that's not our end point, is the putting it on the ballot. That's just the starting point. The end point is that we take public in confidence and they see transparency, that what we are trying to do, why we are trying to do, so that we can make them agree with that. So from that perspective, we had last 2 weeks, and which it probably took 6 or 8 weeks to come up with this thing, which in a small group, to draft this agreement and go through. And we had less than 2 weeks, and now we are supposed to vote tonight and make it yea or nay. That's the limitation I feel.
Mr. Brown, then Ms. Brenner.
So I just want to be clear for the benefit of Mr. Donovan. I'm very, very, very supportive of both more time, effort and money being devoted to triage, prevention and treatment. I just think it's the right thing to do from a social perspective. It's the right thing to do economically as well. That being said, I speak against your proposal because my concern is either you're going to add, by converting the existing work centre into an adult correctional facility, you're adding to the number, or your proposal is to take away from the number by an equivalent number of beds, and it wasn't clear to me which we wanted to do. And I think what we should be doing is basically sending this document with the original numbers forward to the City of Bellingham and having the hearing in 2 weeks to get the public's input on those numbers. The only change I really, thinking about all this whole discussion, The only change I would like to see us make to what was presented to us this afternoon was the changes to number 10, which Mr. Mann inserted. I think I'd like to return to the existing numbers.
Okay, let me, in the order of moving things along, because I think.
You've got two people ahead of you.
Oh, okay, I was just gonna say, I would withdraw my amendment, so.
Oh,
we
you're
can-
withdrawing your amendment.
Yeah, so we can, I'm just trying to raise some of the same concerns I had in the task force group about, I don't think this funds in a concrete way what we want to fund. I can maybe go with the amendment from this afternoon, but I want the Division Street thing to be out there as something that could be considered continued functioning the way it is, separate from a full-scale, full-security jail. And that's maybe not the time to do it in the JFUA, but I think you're keeping the door open with your language. Mr. Mann's language.
Ms. Brenner, then Mr. Weimer.
I just want to understand, okay, does this, what that was done today, allow people to decide between what was given to us by the administration and then this? It has both, right?
No,
No?
we
Why?
changed the numbers a little bit.
Well, I would support this if we did both. And you can, we can call them two separate hearings, but people can speak to either one they want, but they could be both. I really would like to keep it as open as possible.
Oh, you're talking about putting this up for a hearing, not for sending it to the cities with two options.
No, I'm talking about and also, before that, I wanted to bring that up too. Maybe we just need to have some more meetings, not just every 2 weeks on this. And maybe we should meet,
It's the first meeting we've had.
what?
This is the first meeting we've had.
Well, I mean, every 2 weeks is when the council meets. Maybe we should be meeting way more often till we get this done.
Mr. Weimer?
Yeah, I was just going to speak against the amendment, but since it's been withdrawn, I guess I don't need to. I guess historically, we've heard from Ann Deacon about how many millions of dollars we spend on behavioral health stuff already. And the city has matched us almost dollar for dollar on their side, so there's some trust here about that we'll move forward with those things as the task force comes forward with projects. I think the reality is we realize that we probably don't have enough money to deal with all of these things as the state dumps more and more of it on local government. So we need to move forward, and that's why we had this sale in there. If we do sell the property, it will stay for that. That was kind of the original agreement with Bellingham, that we're going to sell that property because they wanted to return to the zoning that it was used for. They agree that it would be a good place for a triage center, so that's another reason it came forward. I can move forward with the one that came forward today. I personally like what we got from the administration better than the changes we made today. So, but I think to get something to the cities for them to start having their discussions on is important, so I would support either one.
Mr. Brown?
My principal reason for supporting that we return to the numbers Mr. Lau's presented today is because that's what the discussions have been with all the other parties. And I think that's the beginning point. I don't think it's appropriate for us to edit these numbers and then just kick off the whole process again. I'd rather use these numbers as a baseline and then hear directly, particularly from the City of Bellingham Council, as to what their feelings are.
Ms. Brenner?
You got me now confused. I thought this one today changes those numbers.
No, and I would like to see us to return to the numbers we had
That came
originally.
to us.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't care. We've done that before with some issues where we've put two hearings out with different, so that if we go one way or the other, it can happen at the same time, rather than having to have another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. So I feel like some of us are talking about sending a document to the city, and some people are just talking about having a hearing.
Oh, I was talking about a
I'm
hearing.
not,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're talking about the same action.
Whichever one we do, I would like it to be both of them.
I don't want to send two
We've done it
possible
before with
multiple
stuff.
choice agreements to the city.
Yeah, no, we've done it before.
Well, I don't want to do that.
Well, I do. Or else I want to go with the original.
Okay, the motion on the table at this point is Mr. Mann has moved the Brown version, we're back to that, in its amended form from this morning. And it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on that? Ms. Brenner?
I move to add the original one we received from the administration and do them both.
Aren't you going to second it?
Somebody
I'll
second.
second it, just 'cause
I'll
I'm
second
not
that.
gonna support it.
I'll second that, but how do we do both?
You have, it's listed as two hearings, or you send it as both, and they can,
So, let me clarify. You're saying the number was 453 to, sorry, let me just go back to that number.
427.
453 to 427,
Right.
and then we should say 440 to 360.
Yeah, you have them as two separate documents. We've done this with things before.
I still think we're talking about two different things.
Yeah.
We've had two
Hearings.
separate hearings,
Yeah.
but we're talking about sending two separate documents to the city of
Documents, yes.
Bellingham.
Well, I don't see why we can't do that too.
That's gonna be up to Jack and Tyler.
See, my point is, we are really talking about 30 more beds or 30 less beds, and that's what we are really discussing here, which is 30 years later, we want to find out, though 30 more was such a gross mistake, or 30 less was such a great decision. We don't know that. And we are really spending all that time on that.
Okay, so Ms. Brenner's motion is,
For both, to send to the city, both of them, or to put it on
so
the
you're
hearings.
amending Mr. Mann's motion?
Yes.
Okay, and it's been seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. That fails 1-6. Back to Mr. Mann's motion for the resolution on the brown cover.
And just for clarity, your resolution is to,
My motion was to send this forward as amended in committee today. I believe that was my motion.
For a hearing or to the city?
Send it to the city of Bellingham
Yeah.
as a joint facilities use agreement.
Yes.
And I guess that also means sending it to all the other cities as well, right? Yeah, so launching this as our proposal of a joint facility use agreement.
Mr. Weimer?
I'm just going to state that I'm going to vote against the motion with the hopes that it gets turned down and we can return to the original motion that we had from the administration.
Mr. Brown?
I'd like to move to amend this document to return the numbers to what the original document we received from
Well, that's basically what he
the
said.
executive, which I think achieves the same thing you wanted, Mr. White.
I'd second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Waving in the gallery.
Down there.
I believe that the termination language is going to create a big challenge for the city of Bellingham to amend it to where it is. It was the absolute last negotiating piece that we had, and I've spent 3 years discussing that particular point with him, and to terminate the language, as I mentioned this afternoon, is if I was able to have it my way on everything is I would probably agree with that, but the language in the agreement has been vetted by 2 of our attorneys, and based on the RCWs that we have and the obligations that we have of working together with the cities, the language in there is adequate, and to put a direct termination language into it goes contrary to a lot of the discussions that we have. So I would just
You're talking
caution
about
the
the date.
council,
Oh, okay.
December 31 of 2049 or whatever it is, I don't have it right here, but I would strongly urge the council in terms of trying to be unified in what we're moving forward is to eliminate that change to the document. And I like the idea of going back to the original one and allowing that. Of course, it was the one that I was involved in, so I'm saying that with a smile on my face.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, then I agree with Mr. Lowes for the reasons he's presented. And so I'd amend my motion to return Section 2, expiration of agreement on page 20 to its original form.
Page 20 of the original
I thought you were,
Page 20 of this.
of this.
didn't your original motion cover the whole thing, just going back to the original?
No, because I left your, I mean, I'm happy to do that too, but I actually liked your change.
Oh, that's right, the little bounty thing.
Well, I would like us to get to a conclusion on the location, but the size is the more critical thing at the moment. And I did like your amendment to item 10.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, what's the motion? I'm sorry.
So the motion is that on page 1, section 3,
Page 1
page 1, section 3
of the tan one.
of the tan one, we return the size numbers to what was originally proposed, and those numbers are still in the document, they're just crossed out, right? And then on page 20, under the section expiration of agreement, we return to the original language,
This page.
and that's page 20.
There's multiple page ones and
There's
stuff.
more than one page 1 and page 20 on these things, so it's kind
There's
of
only one
confusing.
Okay.
So many.
Small 20.
He's on the
This,
substitute
expiration,
packet.
That's section 2.
Yeah.
Right,
Section
that I
2,
get.
the title, if you see, you can see the changes under the expiration of agreement section.
Yeah, I get that. The one with the other one about page 1.
There's 2 page ones, Ms. Brenner. It's the second page one. It's about 4 pages in.
That's what I needed to know.
So,
Okay, and on that page 1, this is section 3.
Yeah, the numbers.
so on that page 1, I'm suggesting we return to the original numbers, which was 440 with a 3% increase to 453 or decrease to 427. So that would return to the original proposal. And then again on page 20, the expiration of agreement clause would return to its original. So that's my motion, and does Mr. Weimer accept that for the second?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Me? Oh, so if we do those things, why aren't we just going back to the original?
Well, you could, but the two things that are still left in there is the silence on the location and the amendment Mr. Mann made to section 10.
Oh, and which amendment did he make?
Recital 10.
I know the
That-
I'm okay
that
with location.
The beds at the work centre would not be added to the total for the jail.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mr. Donovan.
I support your changing based on what I've heard from the executive about the expiration and how, but I would not support changing the numbers as you're proposing now.
And I'm at the same spot.
As am I.
Yes.
And I want to point out, I would still like to return to the original resolution. I had to invite a discussion, public discussion about the numbers. But in an effort to try and satisfy Mr. Mann on process, I'm trying to push forward something that we can talk about. And Mr. Executive looks like he's...
If I may, I'm just going to make a brief comment. I believe that the motion to number 10, I don't think is going to be problematic. I think the question is going to be very clear to the cities, if not La Bounty, where, and obviously because we're very efficient is when is the decision, how the decision is going to get made, and are they going to have an expectation that we're going to be able to get a jail built in 2022, because time is of an essence on this. So if we want to start over, that means that we're going to go back through a property search. We're going to have to re-engage and do a brand new EIS. That one cost us $500,000 again. So, and the construction cost increases and all that kind of stuff, you're talking some major delays in doing that. It's your choice to do that, but I'm just saying is that if the $6 million purchase that you made is a mistake, and you want to identify that as a mistake, then it's going to take time, and I think that the cities are going to want to know an answer to that. So I just, say that that I believe is going to be a concern of the municipalities.
Mr. Brown?
So again, this was I was pushing this forward as an effort to satisfy Mr. Mann on process. The other alternative is that we have a hearing on size and location in 2 weeks.
I'm starting to like that idea a lot better now.
Well, let's switch them again.
Why
All right.
Why wait 2 weeks?
Is sort of the head nod that you want me to withdraw my motion and flip it back the other way?
We're still dealing with Mr. Brown's motion.
Right, so,
I had a comment.
Mr. Sadhu.
I think one of the thought going through my mind for last couple of weeks has been that a previous council 4 years ago made a decision, went through a lot of process, committee, and I remember a lot of articles not in my backyard, and there were like 2 or 3 Bellingham Herald articles that nobody wanted to locate the jail. No city, no other person were happy that where you locate it. And this is just a few years back. And finally, there was an article, the Ferndale finally agreed to have the jail. So we are taking that much time today in 2015. Can you imagine that in 2021, a new council comes in and say that all the decisions they made were mistakes and let's start again? I think that, legislatively, we cannot guarantee every decision we make is always right. We make the decisions with best information we have, best discussion we have, best input we have. And that was the best input, best discussion at that time. And just overturning those things or revisiting those things does not really add value to our governance. This can be applied to many other things too. So that's why in the morning I said that I'm totally agnostic to the location because that's water under the bridge. If I have to do that, I would have totally different proposal, but I got to live with what the same council, same authority, same elected representatives, same consultants, other people, input, task force, everybody went through that, and they made a decision. That's all I wanted to say.
Any more discussion before we vote on Mr. Brown's motion? Yes.
Well, I'm just curious, because Mr. Brown was saying he'd like to go back to the first one, but he doesn't, but he wants to,
no,
wants
I
Ken to
asked
feel
if
better.
the council wanted me to go back to the first one.
Well, that's how we vote, and they find out if the council wants you to.
Well,
Just-
okay. I think for the interests of time, I think let's take a vote on this one, and if it fails, we work on something that does succeed, so.
Okay. Mr. Mann?
So let me just speak on this motion then. So I'm going to vote against it. I think I've felt an obligation to continue arguing and advocating for as small a number as possible because I just truly believe the future of incarceration is not going to be steel and concrete and cages. I think it's too expensive on multiple levels, not just financial on our budget, but what it does to the community and those families that are impacted, and I think it has lousy results. So I've been advocating for a smaller number all along. I thought the amendments we made today allow for a smaller number, but still a lot of flexibility at the upper end as well. And I thought that was really a reasonable place to be, to land. Going back to the original with just a 3% adjustment variance, I think, and starting at a bigger number, just pegs us to a starting point that's higher than I'm comfortable with. I'm just strongly in favor of as small a jail as possible. So I'm going to stick with that, and I want to vote no on that amendment.
Mr. Brown?
And first of all, I completely concur with Mr. Mann on the desire to see a lower rate of incarceration, and I actually think that over time we will get there, and I do actually, I think, an undercurrent in this, I think, is the community's belief that if you don't create a huge capacity, then you put pressure on the system to try and find alternatives. And I agree with that to a large degree. That being said, the proposal as given to us this morning by the executive, when you factor in the mental health beds and behavioural health beds that are included, and if you take those out, because we don't currently have that capacity, right, and we desperately need that capacity, and then if you take out the fact that we are at capacity, we have none of this buffer that they recommend at about 85%, and then you put back in the inmates that are being currently held elsewhere, the facility as proposed this morning is basically at capacity anyway. And that's why I think it's a reasonable starting point, because population itself is going to, as the population increases, the size of this jail relative to the population is going to decrease.
That's right.
Right, which is going to put pressure on the system to work hard to find alternatives over time. And those alternatives are going to take time to implement, in part because as much as everybody says, well, why don't you just do different things differently? We don't control the judicial system. We don't control the criminal code. We don't control the sentencing. We have no influence on that whatsoever. That has to change at the state level and the federal level. And we have to accommodate what we have to do in between. So.
And I understand that perspective, and it's not, I understand your perspective. I can't really say it's out of line. I think what we've found in the last few years is that having that pressure on, as you mentioned, of a shortage has allowed us to really dig deep and make changes. And it's, the city of Bellingham is saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year because they were forced to dig deep and look at their systems. I think if we just build as big a jail as we think we might need, you know, where's the motivation going to be to continue to really make those changes? I think it's nice to think we'll still do that, but you know, let's face it, everything we do on the Whatcom County Council is driven, you know, it's one crisis to the next, whether it's a coal port or an idiotic Supreme Court decision or a crumbling jail. You know, we focus our resources on like the crisis of the day, the problem of the day. And I think if we give ourselves, you know, this large cushion, you know, not to say it's a mega jail, but if we do that, then we're gonna remove that motivation to keep finding improvements and solutions. I think that's just the nature of how it works.
You wanted to respond,
Yeah,
Ms. Brenner?
Yeah, if I can just respond. So, again, I think this is a facility that's sized approximately correctly for the population we have at the moment under the criminal code that we have at the moment. I've stated this before, I believe, publicly. I believe our obligation as a council is to provide, to locate this on a facility that allows for expansion as the population increases, say, over the next 100 years, because this community's had a habit of building a facility and then, you know, landlocking it and having to build another facility. And as Sheriff Elfo explained before, we've done that 7 times in the community, and I don't think that's good sense. That being said, I don't believe that we have any obligation to build the capacity today that we will need in 30 years. That's a decision for, that capacity should be incremental and should be decided as time goes on, every 5 or 10 years or whatever the case may be, by subsequent councils and subsequent communities. So that's one of the reasons I wasn't supportive of the very first number, the suggesting, well, let's build it for 700 or 800 beds because that's what we'll need in 30 years. I don't believe in, I don't support that. In part, by the way, because I don't want to pay for an empty building for 30 years either.
Well, and the technological changes that are likely to come along that'll make this all seem quite medieval.
So again, these numbers are the numbers for today. For a humane facility. We have an inhumane facility.
Yeah.
These are the numbers today for a humane facility, which requires mental health and behavioural health beds and requires a buffer. That is, we're operating at less than 100% capacity.
Okay, we're gonna go one more round and round, and then we're gonna vote.
Well, I'm not round and round, it was just going back and forth there. What encourages me about the number, whatever number it is, I'm not fearful of that number, because they already said, when we discover all these better ways to do things, especially for people with mental illness or substance abuse, we will be able to renegotiate what's there. There are plenty of people who have problems, they're not in control, and they could hurt themselves or others. So they got to be in a safe, good space where they don't feel afraid. But it's got to be something like that. And now that the executive spoke about that we can renegotiate those numbers, it sounds like, especially as things get better in the future, that would be what would happen. You're still going to need safe spaces for those people, and I'm not sure the triage center is allowed to keep people there who are a danger to themselves or others. I don't know.
It's a voluntary facility, but they obviously can't be of harm to themselves or potential to harm other people, and that because of the way the facility is designed, it's not hardened. Obviously, then the next step is the hospital, but even in today's environment, talking with the sheriff, the hospital has people that they can't control because they don't have the staffing because of the stuff, and then we end up getting called to there to take care of it. Obviously, we want to be able to put somebody into the facility and try to stabilize them on their meds or whatever we have to do at that particular time, so when they do exit back into society, whether that be to the Sun House or back to the facilities that we have or back into their homes, that they're stabilized. So yes, we desperately need to have that continuum of care within our facility. And without, it's just the way of the world it is today. Is it going to be that way 30 years from now? I don't know that, but I think with another 70,000 people here, and as Councilmember Rudd said, is we're building a jail that, if you look at the numbers, is basically at capacity today. I don't think we're going to harm ourselves in too big of a way by picking the number that has been agreed to by the administrations.
Mr. Sadhu, then Mr. Donovan.
Okay. My first preference is what Mr. Mann said, 400 plus minus 10%. That's my first preference. My second preference is that way it came from the administration. I'll vote for that as well.
Mr. Donovan?
I think both sets of numbers are too big, and hope we can just start.
The clerk has asked me to restate my motion.
Yeah.
So, she texts you as well, does she? My motion was that in section 3, what is called second page 1, where we talk about the jail numbers, it reads the size of the jail will be, it did read the size of the jail would be 440, changed to 400 beds with used to be 3%, changed to 10% increase, used to be 543, changed to 440, or a decrease 427 to 360. And my motion is to return to the original language, which would read the size of the new jail would be 440 beds with a 3% increase for 453, or a decrease to 427. That's my first part of my motion, and the second part of the motion is on page 20, was to return the language in expiration of agreement to its original form. Is that clear?
And any of those same changes would be made to the resolution as well?
Yeah, I mean, they'll be reflected throughout the document.
Thank you.
Okay. That is the motion we're voting on.
I was going to suggest, why don't we do one by one? That way people want to vote on the numbers first and the expiration. Because why do we?
I would accept that amendment.
Yeah, I think
So-
let's do one by one and get over with.
Let's do the easy one. So section expiration of agreement first.
Yeah, that should be the first
Okay.
one.
Okay.
So which one are we doing first?
The
Page 20.
expiration agreement.
Yeah, but which way?
Page 20.
Returns to the original
Okay.
language.
Okay. All those in favor of the expiration language, going back to the original language, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the next motion is that the language in page 3 would read, the size of the new jail will be 440 beds with a 3% increase, and then in brackets 453, or a decrease in brackets 427.
Okay, everybody got that?
That's back to the original?
Back to the
Yeah.
original numbers? Okay, all those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Noes, please? That passes 4-3.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to now return to this one.
Mr. Weimer had his hand
Oh,
up, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we return the Labani Road language throughout the document.
I would second that.
Discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. That passes 5-2.
Who voted which way, please?
I voted no.
I vote Buchanan, man. Okay, Mr. Brown, go ahead.
So I'd now like to return to, this is sort of like deja vu all over again. I'd still like to propose that we accept the working version of the language regarding having a public hearing about the numbers.
Should we have to approve this first?
We haven't approved the overall motion.
Oh,
approve
I'm
the
sorry.
overall.
You're absolutely correct, sorry.
So the motion now is on the amended language. We've turned a couple things back. So any questions on that motion?
I just have one observation or correction. There's on page 2 of the resolution language and then page 2 of the actual facility agreement, it talks about the Whatcom County Council will consider a resolution that will place a proposition before the county voters in one place, and then the other place it says the county will consider this resolution that will place a proposition before the county voters.
What page? Sorry.
So, page 2,
The first
both
two or the
page,
second?
both page 2s. Both page 2s, on the first page 2 is the last whereas, the first sentence.
Okay, got it.
And on the second page 2, it's number 6. And if you're looking at the number 6 version, I think that's the grammatically correct version. It should be A instead of this resolution. It should be a resolution. But I'd also like to see one less will in there. I'd like to see like a may consider a resolution. So my motion is, in both places, it should read, in 2017, the Whatcom County Council may consider a resolution that will place a proposition before the Whatcom County voters, etc.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
That was on 6, right?
It's in the first, it's in the whereas on page 2 at the bottom, and it's also, number 6.
I just want to check, Madam Clerk, are you clear on that?
Yeah.
So we voted on it. Didn't it pass unanimously?
I said no.
So, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're back to the main motion.
Yeah, so do you have that on the table, or do you need that on the floor? Yeah, do you have the main motion on the floor?
Yes, that's where we're back to. The main motion for the resolution as we've amended it this evening.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Jack.
Yes.
I'm going to make one more, comment. Number 10, I'm looking at it. If retained as an adult correctional facility, the number of beds at the new
Which
jail may
10?
be on page 2 of the brown packet.
Page 2 of the brown
Recital
packet.
number 10.
The second, what? No, it's not, okay, the second page 2.
Number 10, the blue underlined language.
Okay.
We went
Yeah.
through our jail facility needs assessment, this thing here, and determined that the incorporation of the two facilities into one was the appropriate way to go. The sizing of this facility is based on that. The draft environmental impact statement considers that, and our whole design has it in terms of the operational costs that we put together to put it into one facility. And I would just ask for the council to consider one more time to just make the decision to build the facility to the size that ultimately you're going to decide to do it on one site for the operational efficiencies of what we've got going on. Laundry, booking, classifications, programming. I turned in the last budget, I turned one security scanner down there, $250,000 apiece. The sheriff's office would like to have body scanners at both facilities. If we have it at one facility, we can, that's just one small item. We don't have, 2 electrical bills. Everything is there. We can control it. We don't have to have duplication of night shift supervisors and day shift supervisors. I would just ask that the decision be made, and I think that's the expectation of the other parties to this agreement, that we're going to put one facility up and do it right and do it as efficiently as we can, because the overall operational costs down the road are very, very important to Whatcom County and to the city. So I'll hold it right there.
Mr. Brown.
So I agree with what Mr. Lowes has said, and I think the original language here, if I understood it correctly, was to prevent us building a facility, a new facility with the capacity for what we need, and then adding this capacity as well. Is that correct?
No.
No?
Okay.
I was contemplating keeping that facility and building another facility that would be
Smaller.
200, 210, whatever the math said, so that to have a total of 360, which was the lower bound of our initial proposal, my initial proposal.
Okay, so I supported this language because I didn't want to add these two things together and end up with a facility that was 150 beds bigger than what we were supporting. My concern about running two facilities is theoretically, to make them humane, you would need you'd need 2 nursing staff, you'd need 2 correction staff.
No, yeah, hey, I get it.
Theoretically, 2 levels of duplication in mental health and behavioral health beds and all the rest.
I think if we get the triage and mental health and substance use facilities out there that we're hoping for from the state and from the money we've set aside, I think that would be a very good place to have a sort of that extra facility. But that's why I thought it was worthwhile to have that option in there. I think now that 4 of you have just kind of gone back to the original strategy, I do think it's probably less relevant to have that in there, so you guys can vote to take it out. I think it's probably more consistent with what you've been trying to do.
Well, I'd like to propose a slightly different language, which is, I'd like to strike out what was added today and replace it with, this facility shall not be retained as an adult correctional facility, full stop. That's my motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Ms. Brenner?
I would like to offer a friendly amendment. This facility shall be used as a triage center, not a jail facility.
We're contemplating building a new structure on that site to
Right.
be the triage center.
Well, that's what I
not-
mean, the site we're talking about.
I think, yeah, well, I don't know. We
Well,
should
that,
be
I want to
clear.
make sure it says triage, that it says for people, that, I don't want it to be part of a jail. I want it to be I want it to be only for mental health and
So,
substance.
so maybe Mr. Brown's language, if it said, this facility will not be retained as an adult correctional facility, would make
Yes.
you feel better.
I really would rather it say something about this facility or the proceeds from shall be retained for mental health and substance abuse services.
My only hesitation with that is that we may find that the cost of retrofitting the facility is more expensive than building a new facility.
Well, I said the proceeds from.
And that's fine, and I think that's already covered. The proceeds are already, we already say in this very paragraph that if it's sold or transferred, the proceeds go to those very issues. So that doesn't change. All my language does says we're not going to build a new jail at the size we've just talked about and add another 150 beds from the work centre on top of that for capacity. And I fully, by the way, Ms. Brennan, when we come at some future date with redeploying this facility, I think you and I are going to be very aligned on the use of it. So,
I don't know why we couldn't make it clearer, though.
So you're not accepting that friendly
no,
amendment?
I think it's too much for what we're trying to do at this point.
Mr. Sadhu?
I was going to just say that it really says clearly in the same paragraph, if sold or transferred, it will be used for that. All we are trying to do, that this will not be retained as a adult correctional facility. That we are just eliminating that possibility, that's all.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1. Mr. Donovan opposed.
So you now have the full motion. Oh, no.
So now we're back to the main motion again. Any
No,
other
no.
amendments?
Sorry, didn't we vote on this whole thing? Right?
Nope,
No, you jumped in with another amendment.
Oh, I thought we passed it.
now we're ready.
Now we're ready, unless there's more amendments. Seeing no more amendments, all those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No. That passes 4-3. Mann, Donovan, and Buchanan opposed.
So, Mr. Chair, you do deja vu all over again.
So, you're on your next thing.
So concurrent with submitting to this to the city of Bellingham, I would still like to hold a public hearing on the sizing and give the opportunity for the councils, the task force, the city council to all come back and tell us if we've got the numbers wrong or whether we've got them right.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to have a public hearing. Any discussion?
Can I get clarification on, I'm sorry I missed this, are you having it just on the size or the size and the approved agreement?
I'm just proposing the size.
All right, thank you.
Any
Oh,
other?
correct. One other clarification. With the amendments that you discussed earlier to that resolution?
Correct, and with those amendments, we got right to the point of voting on it, then I pressed the pause button.
Thank you.
Mr. Mann?
All right, so now that the council has voted to send this to the cities with a fairly narrow range of sizing options, what exactly is the purpose of getting the public's input on the size now?
Because this is one of the most significant decisions this community's been wrestling with for years, and I think we just have an obligation to give everybody and to take as much input as possible on the sizing issues. And by the way, that includes right down to the Vera Institute. They should be invited to give us a recommendation, the task force, if the members, if they feel they've got a recommendation. We haven't heard from what the city of Bellingham's council feels is the right number.
But we just, you, majority, just sent a number out in a formal document, and then you're saying, we'd like to know what everybody thinks. It just seems a little bit backwards, and I understand, I mean, you're gonna have a construction plan and bid documents, and you're gonna actually have to decide an actual number without a 3% range at some point to go and to build the thing. So maybe you're just getting a head start on that process. But it does seem a little bit like to do it the 2 weeks after we've made our decision to have the hearing seems, I know you're not meaning it
No,
in
this is not my ideal scenario.
It's disingenuous.
I don't think it's anyone's ideas.
Well, it's not my ideal scenario, but we've been presented with a deadline to consider putting this on the ballot. And I think it's, the comment about it being disingenuous, I think the city of Bellingham needs to be notified, along with presentation of what we've just voted on, that we will still be holding a hearing on it, for which they can make a comment.
Maybe we should pass a resolution that tells everyone to go to the city of Bellingham and tell them what they think about the size.
Well, I think you just took care of that.
In terms of process, I mean, if there's a better way to do this, fine, but to push this all the way through to putting it on the ballot without giving the voters an opportunity, and all the other people we've engaged.
Well, that's reasonable. I guess then you could argue that perhaps we'll hear something at the public hearing that will give us second thoughts about putting it on the ballot.
And that's fine too. But if, at the end of the day, I want an open public process on what I think is a very key decision for the community. And I don't know if there's another way to do it, fine, but I don't know another way to do it at this point, given the constraints that we've got in terms of deadlines.
Yes.
And I have to say, I actually agree with the hearing. Maybe we will hear something that's more of the scientific or whatever. Otherwise, a lot of this is opinion, and our opinion as well as other people. So I don't think you can have too many hearings on this.
No, that's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Did anybody ever, did you second it? You seconded it?
I second it.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That's 5-1, Mr. Weimer opposed, and Mr. Donovan out of the room. All right, now you're on to your second item.
Can we take a break for a couple minutes?
Oh, yeah.
We're almost done, I think.
I remember we got this one too. The homelessness one. Where do you want to put that?
What is it?
That's the resolution for that.
Well,
What resolution?
wherever it is.
Yeah. We can put it at the end if you want.
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, okay, great, okay. All right, so, okay. Mr. Chair, we have a resolution identifying the 2018-2019 salaries and benefits for elected officials as set by the Citizens Group on, I'm just trying to remember the name now, the Citizens Group on salaries.
Salary Commission.
And they came, Salary Commission, and they came up with a recommended number that includes a increase for the county executive, and I think it was for the sheriff, and then a cost of living increase for every other elected official. This received approval of a 3-0 vote, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion before us.
That's the amended
Losing our
version,
members quickly.
correct?
And sorry, that is the amended version.
The salmon
Salmon.
colored. I'm sorry, is that what you were saying?
There, that one. Okay, so that's this one here. There's a slight typo on two of the numbers. read in or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, everybody's got the correct version in front of them?
Yes.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Ms. Brenner out of the room.
Mr. Chair, the next item was request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interagency grant agreement between Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District and Washington State Department of Health to support implementation of the Whatcom County Pollution Identification and Correction Program in the amount of $715,000. In this case, the council is acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, we have that motion before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Mr.
With
Chair,
Ms. Brenner out of the room.
Mr. Chair, the next item is request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District and Whatcom County Public Utility District Number 1 to provide partial funding for Phase 4 of a groundwater flow model for the Linden, Everson, the Nooksack, Sumas area of Whatcom County. In this case, the council is acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Ms. Brenner out of the room.
Mr. Chair, the next item is request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District and Associated Earth Sciences, Inc. for Phase 4 of a groundwater model of the Linden, Everson, Nooksack, Sumas area of Whatcom County, numerical model analysis and documentation in the amount of $336,526. In this case, the council is acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Ms. Brenner out of the room.
Mr. Chair, the next item is request for approval for the county executive to award bid number 17-09 for maintenance and construction equipment without operators to all bidders in an amount not to exceed $100,000 per vendor. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh,
That passes 6-0.
what did I miss?
A lot.
What?
Everything.
All that.
Oh, the Title 20? No, what?
That was a long time ago.
I know, what did I
That was
just miss?
yesterday.
Almost.
Well, wait a minute, what did I
We're
wanted-
on other items in finance.
Okay,
number
but which
6.
one did I miss? Okay, which
You
one?
missed 5, you missed
Oh, I missed several.
You didn't
4,
get to vote on it.
3, 2.
Oh, well, I actually supported all those, I don't care. We had them in committee.
Mr. Chair, the next item is not on the agenda, but it was supplemental. It's a resolution expressing support for efforts to reduce homelessness by investing in vocational programs for homeless youth and requesting the county executive to provide financial support for a pilot project to create opportunities for low barrier employment for homeless youth. This was not considered in committee, but we had some testimony, and I'd move approval of this, and I'd like to speak to it.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
So I just wanted to tell people the origin of this. The Northwest Youth Services Centre is in the part of their mandate is to try and define youth employment opportunities, particularly lower barrier opportunities. And in a discussion with the farming community, they of course need labour during the harvest season. And this sort of seemed like a little bit like a marriage made in heaven, that there's homeless youth that need access to low barrier jobs, and the ag community needs the workers. So a discussion started up between Northwest Youth Services and the ag community. And the farming community was quite supportive. They're very supportive both because of commercial reasons, but they're also, I want to give them credit, but they're also very supportive because they see the value of this mission within the community. I wanted to particularly bring this to the council at the evening session because in addition to seeking approval from the council for this resolution, I'd also like to encourage other employers in the community who have access to low barrier employment opportunities to also engage with the Northwest Youth Services, particularly for stuff that's outside the summer season, because obviously the ag work is predominantly a summer program. So with that, I would seek the approval from the rest of the council.
Okay, discussion? Mr. Weimer?
So I'm assuming the administration would bring back a contract, because it doesn't mention Northwest Youth Services at all in here, so it could go to anybody the way this is written.
Correct. Although the Northwest Youth Services appears to be the most qualified contractor.
Mr. Sadoo?
I wanted to know, is this part of the training as well, or it is just facilitating for them to transport them there, come back, or lunch? We did talk about something like that before.
So my understanding is it's predominantly, the Northwest Youth Services would predominantly provide the process of, and if necessary, we've got someone who can speak to it, of selecting and advertising the program, selecting the youth, and then providing transportation and logistics. But my understanding is that the farming community themselves would provide supervision as they would for any other, supervision and training as they would for any other new hire.
Okay, that's fine. I was thinking that if needed, the Bellingham Technical College is a great place to do, but maybe that's way too more involved. But they had a program, I forget the name, Ready to Work or something. It's like one-day program, and they go through this training for new employees, how to be punctual, what does it matter, how to behave at your workplace, or I forgot the name. I was very active at that time, and we would take people, and they could do 2 4-hour sessions, and the cost was very minimal at that time, probably $50 or something, but it walked them through that when you go to a workplace, what kind of behavior, what is your expectation of your employer, and how you are supposed to work through or be familiar with that. So I would just suggest that maybe you can borrow the program from them and use it yourself and have somebody do that. I found it was very helpful. Even people who graduated, they were good welders, but they're not good communicators. So I just want to make the suggestion that there is some more help for these people, and employers are very happy with that people come prepared.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, I think that's a great idea, by the way. But I also think Northwest Youth Services has an excellent track record, and I'm sure they're going to reach out to a lot of places. We've had contracts in the past with them. Do we still have any? I'm trying to remember.
I'm not for sure able to say whether we have them right now or not.
She's shaking her head, yes. But I just think this is a great idea.
I'm very supportive of the opportunity that was brought forward by Councilmember Brown and Buchanan, was it?
Buchanan and Donovan.
Donovan, excuse me, I'm a little bit fuzzy this time of night.
I wonder
but
why.
With that said, is I'm supportive of it. We'll figure out where we can either within our existing allocations be able to fund it, or if we need to come back to the council to get it. I'm supportive of giving the youth of our community an opportunity. I believe in Northwest Youth Services and the work that they're doing, and I'll get the appropriate staff within the organization to facilitate a successful program up to the $25,000 allocation that's requested in the resolution.
Mr. Weimer?
It's not very clear. I just want to make sure that this is just for kind of the coordination and implementation. It doesn't actually cover the wages, does it?
No, the wages, they're intended to be paid by the farmers.
All right. Did this go through our health department at all? Because I know like they prioritize all of our homeless money. Did Ann Deacon or anybody weigh in on whether this is a priority?
I haven't sought their input on this.
Well, I'll support it this time, but it's kind of weird coming out of order and going outside of the channels of people that prioritize homeless money.
And I think one of the reasons that I'm very excited about the potential of this program, in part because I think one of the best ways to slow and even reverse the number of homelessness we have is to try and address these homeless youth who, for whatever reason, find themselves in a homeless position, lack the education, for reasons of personal safety, aren't even able to sleep at night and try and sleep during the day. if we can break that cycle early, what we can do is effectively prevent a percentage of these youth from ending up as homeless adults, and that will have a real tangible change to the amount of homelessness in the community long term. I will say that in the investigation of this process, I'm really quite startled about some of the barriers that exist for youth and homelessness, and I'll be talking to the council after doing some more research about other opportunities. I also just want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Donovan and Mr. Buchanan for support on this issue.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, there was nothing else from finance.
Okay, we are at executive appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. Request confirmation of the county executive's appointment of Sandra Ward to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. Do I have a motion to confirm?
moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next up is a request confirmation of the county executive's reappointment of David Warren and Daniel Larner to the Bellingham Whatcom Public Facilities District.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for confirmation. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
I just saw David Warren recently, and I hadn't seen him in a long time.
We are at introduction. We have 4 items tonight. Do I have a motion to introduce?
I move to introduce.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
We have a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Committee reports, natural resources.
Natural Resources had a presentation by Parks Director Mike McFarland about a semi-annual update, which won the prize for most impressive graphic to Councilmember Barbara Brenner.
I loved it.
Lots of exciting stuff going on and heavy usage of our parks that we're going to be hearing more about. That was our only item.
Finance.
Mr. Chair, we had a discussion presented by Deputy Caleb Erickson on the expansion of the electronic home monitoring program used by the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office, which is quite informative. We had a, and I just wanted to express one point on that. I think the point they made is that once they eliminated the fee structure, that was a barrier to a lot of the adoption. They saw quite a significant increase in the use of that, which I think is to the benefit of the entire community. The second item was we had a discussion regarding the creation of a capital facility reserve fund to reallocate the money that's been freed up from the general fund revenue that was being replaced by EMS revenue. That triggered a fairly robust discussion amongst the council as to what we should use the money for, and I think it was left with a tagline of "to be continued." And then the third item was a discussion about the Business and Commerce Committee that was proposed by Mr. Sadhu, and there was a discussion between the committee regarding changing that, and then we decided to hold that in committee.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. Brenner.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, because we have this, it's a number of pages for anybody who's interested live or on the YouTube or whatever it is. This is pretty amazing. You know, we don't get a lot of credit, and things have been, they're just getting better on all these alternatives to incarceration. And the county's doing some of them too. And in fact, I might have it wrong, but it was my understanding, we actually have a bigger menu than the cities because of some of the things that the county can do, but the cities can't. I can't remember what they were, but there's a lot of different things here that I didn't even know about. I'll give you one. You know, I know about the electronic home thing, but I didn't know about home detention and some of these other things, and they were very interesting. So if anybody's interested, there's about, 4 or 5 things here. and just explained pretty well. So we're moving in the right direction, I think.
Okay, I can report that we had a special committee of the whole meeting this afternoon. It was on the critical areas ordinance. We had two presentations by
George.
the Whatcom County Conservation District, George Boggs, and there was one on the Conservation Program on Ag Lands, or CPAL, and the other one was on the Whatcom County, what's the D stand for, do you remember?
Whatcom Conservation
Whatcom
District.
Conservation District Livestock
Livestock.
Program for FY18. So after those presentations, we proceeded to start going back through some of the proposed council amendments to the CAO. Article 5, we got through that. That was the critical aquifer recharge areas. And we just started Article 8, which is a conservation program on agricultural lands, the CPAL program. So that'll be the next article of the CAO that we take on next meeting. Other items, Councilmember Mann has one. It's in pink.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Yeah, at the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, we approved a public participation plan dealing with the property out on, that we were talking about earlier tonight at Division Street, to advocate for it as a triage facility, expanding that triage facility out there, and we're working with the state to get funding and so on. So we had a motion and approved a statement to basically request that the county administration begin the public outreach plan. It's in here, public involvement plan. It's in that letter. Y'all got it on your table or on your desk chair or whatever. And the main data point in there is that by September, no later than September of this year, the county will facilitate the community meeting out in that area to explain what our goals and preliminary design is for that crisis triage facility. And so that recommendation comes from the task force. I don't know if you would like a motion or a vote from us to direct you to do that. Okay, I didn't think so. I mean, honestly, Tyler and Jack have been great about supporting the work of the task force, so that you guys will get with the city and follow their steps to get that. And our job as a county council is to try and continue to educate the public on the benefits of those services, substance use, mental health, triage. All of that is going to go a long way towards improving conditions for folks in crisis and hopefully reducing the burden on our jail.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mann. Council member updates? Nothing? Mr. Mann?
I enjoyed an awesome weekend of weather, and I really want to just thank the weather gods for what is the biggest sort of outdoor recreation weekend of the year for the county from a tourism perspective. The Ski to Sea race, the big parade on Saturday, the big race on Sunday, and really great turnout and great conditions for the race. And, you know, thousands of people that come to participate really had a great time.
And he was the MC.
I was the MC of the awards ceremony 7 years in a row.
All right.
Yep.
Mr. Brown?
You must know what you're doing.
I'm pretty good at it.
You've had the practice. I attended the Festival of Flags event from Memorial Day, and which is always well done. We live in a community that is, at times gets very partisan, and as we're all very aware, and so I want to break through that for a minute and acknowledge that Charlie Crabtree was recognized by the state association, I can't remember the association, as the Volunteer of the Year for helping veterans in need and for transportation and medical issues and so forth. And so I think he deserves credit for that.
I got nothing, Mr. Brennan?
You know, I have something wonderful, but I don't want to, I just feel like everybody's been here so late. I'll tell you individually or something.
I second the ski thing, and I want to thank, I hope I did this last year. It takes hundreds of volunteers to make that race go, and I'm usually in the race and not volunteering. So thanks to the people who do that volunteer. work. I don't know if this is an update or other item, but several of us went out to see Swift Creek, myself for the first time getting the full tour of that. And that is a pretty amazing, seemingly intractable, impossible problem that's going to involve federal, state, local efforts.
And international.
Yeah, and Representative Van Rubin was there, the executive. It was an eye-opener. We'll be hearing more about that.
Well, I just had a private family gathering honoring my father. He was a Second World War veteran. He passed away probably a little more than 25 years ago, and my kids have never met him. But it was great, that Memorial Day, and remembering his memory. Yeah.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? If not, we are adjourned.